The base is dropped on a Friday edition of Soccer Down here, April 19th. And no, the base dropping was not the thunder you were hearing all night long. It was a busy night for my dog anyway. I'm sure there were some other dogs that were not happy about the thunder going on. But
guilty.
Got me up early and got me reading all about the MLS announcements from yesterday, of which there were two major ones. We will get into all that this morning. If you guys have questions, please throw them our way on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. There's a lot of confusion and I think some misunderstanding and a lot of bluster about how things are going here. So I'd like to try to get into everything that we know as we know it. It's a packed show. We will have Atlanta and Dallas preview segments with Mike Conti of 92.9 The Game, with Doug Robertson of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. We'll also get into the NWSL and the defending champs, the North Carolina Courage, with Mitch Northam from Pro Soccer USA. All of that and as much discussion as we can pack into as long as we go about the MLS announcements. We're going to start with expansion because it's a little more cut and dried and a little easier to digest and understand. The announcement yesterday, and there was a Board of Governors meeting in Los Angeles yesterday, and we didn't really expect major announcements out of this, but we got them. Expansion was the first one that hit. And they made it clear they're going to 30 teams. They didn't say that they're stopping at 30. That's, I think, one important thing to put out there. Last time when they talked about going to 28, they did say that was it. Well, they kind of left that out of it here because obviously that wasn't it. They confirmed that the expansion fee for the next two teams, clubs 28 and 29, will be $200 million. That has been a significant increase over the years. The timeline that we know right now, so 2020, Nashville and Miami are coming in, and yes, that was repeated. I know there's lots of talk that Miami's not going to happen, but that was repeated again yesterday by Major League Soccer. Something's happening with Miami in 2020, or we're going to have a significant departure from the plan that is currently laid out. Austin is structured to come in 2021. Beyond that, we don't know. Now, it was specifically mentioned that Sacramento and St. Louis have taken a step forward. Formal presentations are expected to take place during the second quarter of this year. There's no timeline established for joining the league for those two or for the process on number 30. We do have some audio from the first two that are up. St. Louis is the first one. Where's this audio from, John?
From Fox 2, and Jeff Bernthal is in studio, and you will hear from MLS Commissioner Don Garber.
And here is the bottom line. What the league commissioner is basically saying is if St. Louis wants an expansion team, it will be awarded one if it can convince the league it has a winning plan. The thought was the league would expand to 28 teams, pitting a fight between Sacramento and St. Louis for the final spot. But following the MLS owner meeting in California, the league commissioner said the league will expand to 30 teams and will enter into exclusive talks with Sacramento and St. Louis.
We have not determined when each of those teams will come in. It should be assumed that they'll come in somewhere around 2021 or 2022. That's going to depend on the presentations that we'll make, the discussions we'll have with them at our expansion committee meetings.
There are still hurdles. The commissioner pointed out the details for how St. Louis's soccer stadium will be paid for are not yet finalized.
And I will say that in St. Louis's case, they still have a lot of work to do with the city and the state in order to finalize their stadium situation.
Local sports analyst Bill McDermott believes St. Louis's rich soccer history is a big reason the league wants St. Louis.
And I think because of the legacy of the sport here in this city, it's only proper, it's only justified that St. Louis play a part in professional soccer here in the United States.
Apparently, league owners agree.
We'll say that a lot of the discussion around the table today was about the great history of soccer in St. Louis, The Landshoots talked about producing the movie, The Game of Their Lives, and how the kids on the hill went out and beat England in the 1950 World Cup. There's no question that St. Louis is a soccer market.
A short statement from potential team owner Carolyn Kindle Betts said today's news increases the likelihood but does not guarantee a team. Her statement said her group looks forward to working with the commissioner towards the goal of bringing the MLS to the country's soccer capital.
That last part's kind of the key. St. Louis is in the driver's seat, but there's no guarantee yet. There's still a formal presentation. There's still a lot of specific things that Major League Soccer is looking for this to get done, and there is competition for these spots. One of the other favorites at the moment is Sacramento. Here's a clip from Sacramento, and where's this from?
CBS 13, and you hear from the Sacramento Republic team president and the mayor of Sacramento at the end of the piece.
Yeah, you guys, some big news, maybe not the news we were hoping for, but while today did present an opportunity for the MLS to discuss expansion sites, no one expected to have a city named by the end of the day. While Commissioner Don Garber did not award that final expansion team, he did drop a different bombshell. The MLS will now target 3 additional cities, expanding to a total number of 30 teams. No doubt fantastic news for the Republic's chances, as it was set to come down to Sacramento and St. Louis in what would have been the final spot. Perhaps both pitches were too strong to turn down. Nonetheless, Republic brass are now just one handshake away from realizing their ultimate goal. We caught up with team president Ben Gumpert just moments ago.
We're extremely confident about where we sit. As we have throughout the process, we're going to make sure that we are working closely with the commissioner, with MLS ownership, with the expansion committee, so that we get everything that we need to done to represent Sacramento and have an announcement hopefully in the coming weeks.
I'm over the moon, and I love the number 30. The league's announcement today, recognizing that it is not a final announcement, says very clearly that Sacramento is on the precipice of becoming one of the 2 next major league cities.
Now, league officials once again refrained from tying themselves to a concrete timeline, but they do hope to have the 28th and 29th cities named by the All-Star break, which takes place this July, with the 30th to be named down the line.
Again, the last part's pretty important there. You're trying to get things done by the All-Star game in Orlando. That's your next major league event where it would be great timing to make announcements that, hey, St. Louis has passed the test. Hey, Sacramento's passed the test. They're in, and we'll have one more with the sweepstakes starting tomorrow, whatever it looks like. Something I would say is keep in mind who is saying what right now, because I've seen some things pop up that are interesting. Jordan Gardner, who is an investor in a club in Denmark, co-owner of Dundalk FC as well, someone who's chosen to invest money in European clubs, an American as opposed to MLS, said, I have a hard time seeing financial metrics that justify a $200 million fee for a MLS franchise right now. The global driver of revenue/valuations in football is TV/media, and MLS ratings are abysmal right now and seemingly only getting worse. Couple things. One, they're not getting worse. They are holding firm. They're not improving at a rate you'd like to see. That's absolutely true. But they're not seemingly only getting worse is stretching. Honestly, the financial metrics that justify a $200 million fee, you can look at what's happened in Atlanta in a short period of time. Arthur Blank paid somewhere, and this number was not public, somewhere between $70 and $80 million. Those are the generally accepted numbers for what Atlanta paid to come into the league. And Forbes valued the club at $330 million with not even the full 2018 scope of things affecting that. That's a pretty good short-term return. Now, is everybody seeing that type of return? No. But the other things that are justifying those types of numbers, are what happened in Orlando last year, John, with I think it was 10% of the club being sold off, and the valuation at that time was $500 million that drove that sale. Yep. Now, there's a stadium involved, but I think the biggest thing is what justifies a $200 million fee is that there are more people who want to buy it at that price than there are spots.
And I mean, right now it's simply supply and demand. And if folks want to get in on it, then you're looking at that kind of metrics. I mean, you just do the math on the Arthur Blank purchase, and you're looking at $250 million. So even with that math, you're still on the plus side. And to answer your question from Forbes, it was 8.63% of Orlando Sports Holdings that was sold at nearly a $500 million valuation. So that's the ballpark that you're living in right now. And if folks want to get into the MLS dance party, and you have folks that aren't going to flinch at $200 million, then you're going to continue to do that. And remember, you've also got the TV contract coming up in 2021. So you're looking at that as another element to another revenue stream that could aid you one way or the other if you want to come into the league and sit there and have a valuation that would have your franchise going forward. So there are a couple of things at play here when it comes to wanting to be a part of MLS. And right now, this is where everyone seems to be attracted with eyeballs. I don't see folks jumping into Major League Baseball to want to be owners. I don't see people selling either. And it's the same in the National Football League, the same in the NBA. It's a very rare group to be involved in. And right now, MLS has these openings and has opportunities in a bunch of different cities that want to be a part of MLS right now. You don't see leagues expanding out of the Big Four. You don't see folks investing in NASCAR, which was thought of to be the fifth one for a certain amount of time, because NASCAR's ratings are tanking and you're seeing sponsors pulling out. So right now, MLS seems to be the place that folks are gravitating toward.
There's a line of people right now, and that's why you start looking at who number 30 could be. And Kevin from Charlotte asked about Charlotte. Charlotte right now has to be in that conversation in a big way. And Don Garber specifically mentioned very positive discussions in Las Vegas and Charlotte. We hadn't heard about Vegas yet in any kind of detail from MLS. Garber mentioned it yesterday. He also mentioned Detroit as a great soccer market, and they've been bidding for an expansion team. There's a lot of discussion this morning about Garber's comments and about Major League Soccer on Charlotte morning television. That's notable. David Tepper has come in and talked a lot about MLS. It's a big part, I think, of what he wants to do with either Bank of America Stadium or building a new one. He sees what's happening, south on I-85, and he wants to be a part of that. And he's hiring people that have experience in the soccer world as the president of his franchise. So makes a lot of sense for Charlotte to be in that mix. Landon Donovan had a radio interview yesterday and talked about continued interest in San Diego. The ballot initiative did not go the way of the group trying to bring an expansion team to San Diego. It doesn't mean it's done. It would have to be reorganized, and they'd have to work with the group that did acquire the rights to building a stadium. It's possible. It's not rolled out yet. Now it feels like the door could be wide open for this number 30 spot with cities that have not been part of the process. But there's also cities that have been part of the existing process, with Raleigh, with Phoenix as two others that I think you have to keep an eye on. San Antonio hasn't thrown in the towel just yet, although Austin's emergence makes it far less likely San Antonio comes in, but not impossible. It's a crowded market right now for teams, and to me, that's why you can get $200 million. And I know a lot of people have comments about, oh, that's so much money. They're always going to have to keep expanding because that's the only way they're making money. That's not entirely true. That's again, it's a bit of a stretch depending on who's saying it. But also you do have to look at the long-term investment that some owners have put in and lost a lot of money doing this to build it to a point that the market is where it is. This is one way they get recouped. That happens. Pretty common, to be honest, in sports. All the other leagues went through it. MLS is just going through it right now in this time frame. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think 30 is the final number either. I think once you get to 30, maybe if the interest is there to go to 32, okay. Past that, you're going to have some serious discussions about what it really looks like. Does it look like a MLS 1, MLS 2 type of scenario? I could easily see that happen because that's what soccer is known for, and it's also an opportunity to continue to expand in a different way. It's an opportunity that American sports just hasn't had before. So what that looks like, I don't know. And that's far off down the road right now. So right now, Sacramento and St. Louis have, what do you want to say, one foot in the door? Is that fair at this point? I think so.
Yeah, I'd say knocking on it at the very least, yeah.
Yeah, I think they got a foot in the door. I think they at least have a foot in the door because they have a meeting set up to make a formal presentation to finalize everything. So that's your 28 and your 29. Who's number 30? Could be a lot of different people. And I think the more people that fight for number 30 makes the likelihood of going to 31 and 32 even more likely. And it also, I think, increases the likelihood of going past that and completely reshaping what Major League Soccer could be down the road. Let's take a break here. The next segment, training compensation, solidarity payments, it's complicated. We're not going to be able to get into all of it in that segment before Mitch Northam joins us. We're going to try to just lay the groundwork for what it is, what it means that MLS is going to be part of this now. We'll talk more about it later on. I know you're going to have questions. Please tweet them at us, at Soccer Down Here. We will get to them after everything. It will be an extended show today. We don't know how long. We want to answer all of your questions because these are two huge, momentous announcements that happen on the same day that will shape Major League Soccer going forward. And we want to try to give you all the best information that we possibly can. So hang out with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, April 19th. Now the complicated part. There will not be a test on this, but we're going to try to have it make sense because I've seen a lot of the discussion around it lumping it all together, and it's not. There's two very different things about it. So MLS will now assert training compensation claims for any Major League Soccer Academy product that signs their first professional contract outside of the U.S. or Canada. That's training compensation is part one. We're going to start there. So FIFA regulations changed in 1995. This was all part of the Bosman case that didn't create free agency like we currently know it in American sports, but as close to the soccer version of it as possible. Basically, it eliminated the lifetime reserve clause that when you sign a contract with a team, they always have the right to match it if they want. So they could basically hold players hostage. That's gone. That was gone in 1995 with the Bosman case. This was part of FIFA's scheme, and not in its scheme in a negative way, scheme in a very European sense, to protect smaller clubs from investing money in players, but then seeing them sign with bigger clubs and the smaller clubs getting nothing. So the FIFA regulations dictate that the club that signs the player is responsible for paying training compensation to every club that contributed to the player's training, starting from the season of his 12th birthday through the season of his 21st birthday. Additionally, training compensations due on the player's subsequent international transfer through the season of his 23rd birthday. So this is not a domestic thing. MLS will not seek training compensation for players that sign deals with USL Championship, with NISA, with Canadian Premier League teams. It's not FIFA regulations don't cover domestic payments. FIFA covers international payments. Okay. Also, the MLS club needs to have shown genuine interest in signing the player before their move. If it's a player that trained in an MLS academy, they let the player go, then they go sign overseas, MLS will not ask for that payment, and they wouldn't get it if they did. They have to have shown an interest in signing the player. The actual compensation is a little hard to figure because MLS and Canadian clubs have not been on the FIFA training compensation chart before. Roughly, it's a lower amount for the time spent ages 12 to 15. It's a higher amount for older players. It corresponds to what the club that signed the player would have spent to develop that player. So European clubs would have spent more. South American clubs would have spent a little bit less. Asian, African clubs would spend less. CONCACAF clubs would spend less. So it depends on which years were spent in the MLS club's academy as to what they can claim. That's training compensation. Solidarity payments are different. MLS clubs will seek FIFA-administered solidarity payments when players developed in MLS club academies are transferred for a fee between two clubs in different federations, so two clubs from different countries. If a non-MLS academy youth club has a rightful claim to a portion of that solidarity payment, the MLS club's only seeking its own percentage of it. They're not going to seek the full payment to distribute to non-MLS academy youth clubs. That's on the non-MLS academy youth club to seek that, and we've seen cases where they have through FIFA so far. Now, according to FIFA, up to 5% of the transfer fee is to be withheld and paid by the club receiving the player proportionally to the clubs involved in that player's training during the years between his 12th and 23rd birthdays. Unlike training compensation, which is only paid for players who have not yet reached the end of their age 23 season, solidarity payments will be due for the duration of a player's professional career, anytime he's transferred between federations while under contract and a transfer fee is paid. Now, look, clubs don't generally disclose the transfer fee. They don't generally disclose the solidarity payment amount. FIFA allows for the clubs who are involved in the transfers to agree amongst themselves. You can take less than the 5%. It can get balanced out. That's why you often see, clubs have a written percentage in a sell-on clause that would trump this type of thing. This is flexible, but it's up to that 5%. This is where it gets tricky because you don't know how it's sorted out generally. And this is where you're going to have some consternation at times. That's your two separate ways payments are going to happen with MLS clubs. This is a big change, John, because in the past, MLS clubs stayed out of this because U.S. Soccer told them to. Now, U.S. Soccer's taken on that. They've basically washed their hands of all of it because there's a lot of potential complications with this, and there's a lot of potential questions, especially where it comes to like child labor law, antitrust, all kinds of things that make this complicated. And that's why U.S. Soccer is basically like, we're out of it. It's between MLS clubs and FIFA. Y'all deal with it.
And, you're looking at, let's just go to the Todd Durbin quote from yesterday. And Durbin is the MLS Exec VP of Player Relations and Competition. He says, quote, "We've been making increasing investments in youth development, and that investment has accelerated over the past few years. We intend on continuing to make that investment, want to grow that investment, but in the event that a player we develop decides to sign overseas, we believe that we should be able to recoup that value, the value of that investment."
And it could be a few $100,000. It could be, as low as 40, 50,000 on the training compensation side. And the specific cases Durbin's mentioned relate to Alex Mendez and Uli Yanez from the LA Galaxy Academy, who signed in Germany. And there was a whole big discussion about the contracts they've signed in Germany being cheap contracts. German clubs, Freiburg and Wolfsburg, signed those two guys, respectively, Mendez and Yanez. Weston McKennie went from Dallas to Schalke, no fee paid. Atlanta lost Zion Jones to Schalke, no compensation. When you've got MLS clubs spending $3 to $4 million a year on operations in the academy, let alone the investment facility and infrastructure, this is something now that they're producing players who are going straight to Europe without signing a pro deal. It's something that makes sense from an MLS perspective to go out and chase this. Now, one element that we'll have to get sorted out is DC United and Minnesota United. Their academies are not completely subsidized. I don't know the details of how subsidized they are, if they are. I know DC United families do pay to participate in that academy. I don't know numbers. I don't know percentages. Same with Minnesota. This was mentioned in the article over at The Athletic. Mark Abbott, the vice president of MLS, told The Athletic, "We're going to address the way those two teams deal with their funding as a part of this process. We haven't finalized that yet, but it will be addressed as a part of that move." It's another reason why MLS clubs haven't been involved in this, and American youth clubs haven't been involved in this as a whole up until very recently, because most of the players who have moved from and signed their first professional deal paid to play at that youth club. Now, that's starting to change, but in the past, that was just how it was. So would that youth club, who was already basically being paid for that training, be allowed to double dip and get a training compensation payment from the professional club that signed the player, although they had already been paid for that training? That's where it gets really complicated, and that's where the U.S. just youth soccer system is very complicated. That's just part of all the complications. The Players Association for Major League Soccer does not like this at all.
Nope.
We'll get into their statement later. There's things that I think are true about what they say, but there's also, I think, some grandstanding, and I think a lot of it will be worked out, ironed out, discussed, maybe kindly or not so kindly, during the upcoming CBA negotiations. It's going to be a definite talking point, and it's something that will complicate those discussions for sure. Up next, first off, we'll take your questions on all of this as things pop up. Please send them our way. We're going to get to those probably at the end. We'll try to get a few before the end of hour number 1. There's so much going on right now. Up next, we're going to talk NWSL, North Carolina Courage. Mitch Northam from Pro Soccer USA will join us. Courage are undefeated so far in the season. Big 5-0 win over Orlando. We'll get Mitch's take on that and the NWSL as a whole right after this.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA is a national nonprofit working to transform youth and high school sports so that every child has a positive character-building youth sports experience. PCA provides live and online workshops to train double-goal coaches whose first goal is winning and whose second, more important goal is teaching life lessons through sports. PCA also has workshops for parents and high school student athletes. For more information, please visit positivecoach.org.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's always motivating me to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Keyboard Cat, YouTube star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Start yours today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. Jam-packed Friday edition. Getting ready for the weekend. We'll talk Atlanta and Dallas here in just a bit. But up first, the NWSL is already in week 2. The North Carolina Courage have their first win of the season in week 2. Mitch Northam was there. What's up, Mitch?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Make sure you're reading all of Mitch's stuff over at Pro Soccer USA. Tons of content, not just Courage related. North Carolina FC, USL, NWSL, Atlanta United. Mitch writes about everything.
Indeed, yeah, whatever they need. Appreciate the plug.
No worries, man. Primetime Mitch on Twitter.
At Primetime.
Yeah, I figure people who, when I say Twitter, they know it means at Primetime Mitch. But, just
old folks like me who kind of have to be reminded.
Oh, jeez. John. Anyway, let's move on to Wednesday, the big 5-0 win. 30 shots. I mean, it felt like the Courage was just putting Orlando under siege, although it took them most of the first half to break through. What was your take on how the match played out?
Yeah, for sure. It was, I think after the match, one of the PR guys for either the Pride or the Courage said it was the most lopsided loss in Orlando Pride history, and it kind of felt a lot like that. It sort of, to me, was just kind of one team, who knows their identity and knows what they're about and knows what they're going to do, and another team who's sort of searching and trying to implement some new things. And the result of that was, a 5-0 win for the Courage. The first half, Orlando played pretty well for the most part. I mean, they stuck in the game. They controlled possession. They were creating some chances of their own. And then for whatever reason, Alex Morgan was trying to dance on the ball away from a defender near the 18. And Crystal Dunn just kind of stepped in and did Crystal Dunn things and created a goal. And then second half, it just kind of looked like a different game. The Courage just kind of blew everything open. They got 2 goals off of set pieces. And at some point, it just sort of seemed like Orlando quit. It was kind of a surprise because this is sort of the same way that Orlando played when they came to North Carolina for a preseason friendly, and North Carolina beat them 4-0. So I think Paul Riley and myself included was sort of expecting them to come out and maybe play a little bit like Chicago did last Saturday, where they sort of sat back in a low block and sort of tried to absorb a lot of stuff and would have been happy to get out of there with a draw. Orlando came out and played and, like I said, we looked really good in the first half in some spurts, but that second half just, couldn't execute.
It seems, Mitch, that the last thing that the NWSL needs is an angry North Carolina Courage team. considering the draw that happened to start their season, and they had to score late to get that shared result. We can look at numbers and we can sit here and look at highlights, but the fact that the first goal for the Courage didn't happen until just before the break, and then they put the pedal down in the second half. It seems like that the second 45 minutes, it was just anger and domination and everything. And you look at this, if you were the opposing coach on the touchline, how do you slow down / stop what you've seen in the North Carolina Courage? Is there a way?
Yeah, I don't know if there is. I think a lot of teams might try to do what Chicago did, where they, like I said, they just kind of sat back and hoped that Sam Kerr got loose one time, and she did, and got them a goal. And like I said, they were more than happy to get out of there, with a 1-1 draw. And they were actually leading, that match last Saturday until the 65th minute. So, it was looking like they were going to get, escape out of there with a win. So I think you might see a lot of teams, at least when they come into North Carolina, play sort of, that bunker kind of low block style that Atlanta United experienced a lot last season when teams came into the bends. The Courage have a really, really sound offensive attack. They're going to put a lot of shots in the box. Controlling possession, I think, and just sort of trying to sit back and maybe, absorb a lot of that and then get out on a counter is going to be maybe a way that, a lot of teams choose to play them this year. And that's going to be a challenge for them. I don't think they saw a ton of that last year. So that'll be, something that Paul Riley will kind of have to figure out in practice. But when a team like Orlando, comes out and they want to play against them, North Carolina is more than willing to do that. In the second half, a lot of it was, they got a lot of really good shots on goal. And again, got those two set pieces that were executed perfectly. But their defense was also just better. It seemed like, I think it was Mewis and Zerboni kind of really closed down on Marta there in the second half and really controlled her in the midfield. In the first half, she was kind of getting loose and creating some things. I think it was just a more sound all around second half. Orlando kind of let off. The Courage was kind of putting more pressure on. So it was, I don't know if it was an angry North Carolina team that they, were just thirsty for some goals, but they definitely put the gas pedal on there in the second half.
So my question is, when we get into the World Cup and rosters are affected by it, which for the U.S. and Canadian players, that'll be pretty soon, honestly. How do you think teams are going to approach North Carolina at that point? Do you think maybe Paul Riley will benefit from teams opening things up a little bit because they don't necessarily know who North Carolina is going to throw at them, or is Lynn Williams still going to strike fear into their hearts?
Yeah, that's one thing I'm not sure about. That'll be interesting to see, just sort of how that roster takes shape when those players are gone from the World Cup. I don't know. Yeah, you might see more teams, choose to go that Orlando style of just, opening it up and trying to press and trying to attack and, really trying to get some goals, as opposed to what Chicago did where they kind of sat back in that low block. You might see more teams kind of test North Carolina during those stretches where they're without those World Cup players as Paul Riley tries to figure out, how that team is going to look without a lot of key pieces. But like you said, they're still going to have Lynn Williams. They're still going to have those two fullbacks, pressing up the field. And they have a deep team. Wednesday night, Julia Spetsmark made her debut. She's a player who has some caps with the Swedish national team. Probably isn't going to go to the World Cup this year, but she's going to come off the bench a lot for them, during this time, and then probably start a lot for them when those World Cup players are gone. She got in the game and scored a goal. Leah Pruitt, their first-round draft pick, she's played in both matches so far. So I think Paul Riley is trying to get her some playing time to get her used to kind of the pace of play in NWSL. I think he definitely kind of has a plan. It seems like, he's trying to get these players in who he's going to rely on during those stretches and get them some playing time now. So that way when the time comes and they're without, like I said before, I think they could be without anywhere from 7 to 9 players, it looks like, during at any time, either during these kind of international friendlies, these pre-World Cup warm-ups, or the actual World Cup. They're going to need some bodies for sure to get some points.
In a World Cup year, Mitch, how do you improve on what they did last year, winning the ICC? Horizon, it was a Horizon job, obviously getting the Shield in the NWSL, getting the title. How really do you improve on what they were able to do? And I know that there's a set level of expectations for the Courage, but when it comes to goals and aspirations, is it the same as it was last year because you're in a World Cup year, or how do you continue to add things to what you were able to do in the past?
Yeah, I think they probably all know it's kind of unrealistic for them to do what they did last year in terms of they only had one loss the entire season. But I think their goal is still to win the Shield, win the championship, and win the ICC. Considering they're hosting the ICC, I think they would like to come out of that with a win. I think their goals are still pretty much the same. But yeah, I think they want to be, a little bit more, different this year and be able to play some different styles. And they're going to have to, if they kind of face these different types of teams. I think Paul Riley said Wednesday night, in this league, you can't play just one style. So they're going to have to figure out how to, attack a team. When the team like Chicago comes in and wants to play that low block, they're going to have to figure out how to get 3 points out of that match instead of just a draw. So I think their goals are still pretty much the same. But yeah, during, when these players are gone from the World Cup, I think Riley does want to get them in and, get them some good experience, because later down the line, when you get to September, October time frame, if there's injuries or whatever, you want to be able to rely on those players, in some big time matches. I think for the most part, their goals are still pretty much the same. I think personally, it seems like Lynn Williams is kind of out to prove a lot, being left off the World Cup roster. It seems like so you might see her maybe go on a tear. Crystal Dunn has been on a tear so far this season, 3 goals and an assist in her first 2 matches. So maybe there's some kind of individual players looking to do some really good things this year. But yeah, I think as a team, they're still trying to defend the treble, I think they're calling it. So that's what they're trying to do.
So 2 matches in, both at home. What's the buzz like around the Triangle for the Courage so far?
It seems like it's been pretty good. I think their first match, they had about 4,000 people. The crowd was pretty loud. And then the second match this past Wednesday, I don't remember the exact number of it, but it was more than the opener. So I think, right now they're sort of competing with, the Hurricanes are in the playoffs. So they're competing with that. College basketball season is over, so that's a good thing for them. I think the buzz is pretty good. They're attracting some good numbers in terms of fans. I think they have some things planned. I think next Thursday they have something planned as a sort of a World Cup kind of send-off thing. Where they're gonna open up some stuff to some fans and throw a little party of sorts. I know they have some kind of pep rally type stuff planned for the International Championship Cup. So yeah, I think the buzz is pretty good. It's definitely a soccer friendly market, a market that really likes its soccer.
Who are you looking forward to seeing their game develop the most this year? I mean, it could be one of the big names. It could be a Lynn Williams. It could be a McCall Zerboni. But when it comes to looking at that roster and you coming into this season, who are you looking forward to seeing their game get to that next level, whatever that term is and whatever quantifies that? Who are you looking at and sitting there going, yeah, I want to see this person take that next step?
Yeah, I think coming into the season, it probably was, one of the players who, has sort of been on the fringes of the U.S. women's national team, whether it was Lynn Williams or even Jaylene Hinkle, who, I think, there's a lot of problems that people might have, maybe with her politics and stuff, but she's definitely a, very talented player, probably one of the best fullbacks in the NWSL. So I was sort of interested to see, if in a World Cup year, if either of those players are kind of going to take some measures to hey, you left me out, but let me show you what I can do here in the NWSL. I was sort of keeping an eye on those 2 players for sure coming into the season. But so far, I've been really intrigued by what Crystal Dunn is doing. Somebody who has played fullback a lot for the U.S. women's national team, but has played the number 10 for Paul Riley so far in these 2 matches. And like I said, 3 goals and an assist. I mean, she's really been kind of the focus of their offense so far. She's kind of always been in the right place at the right time. Those 2 corner kicks that she got goals of, the ball just sort of fell to her, and, credit to her for putting a, excellent shot on frame each time. And then, like I said, stealing that ball from Alex Morgan for their first goal against Orlando. And then she had the goal, the equalizer against Chicago. So, yeah, she's somebody who, you might not think of as somebody who can generate a ton of offense like that. But I think she had 8 goals and 7 assists or something last year. So it wasn't their leading scorer, not Lynn Williams type numbers. But it'll be interesting to see if Crystal if Paul decides to kind of keep her in that role. And she keeps putting up these type of numbers. I don't know if there's a Crystal Dunn Golden Boot campaign in store. But yeah, I mean, she's had a great start to the season.
Mitch, thanks for hopping on with us on a really crowded Friday. What do you have coming up over at Pro Soccer USA that people can be on the lookout for?
Yeah, for sure. I will have a USL notebook of sorts probably being filed at some point today. I do a little USL review, just kind of a rundown of things going on in the league and some goals people should check out and stuff. And then I believe I am filing something on Crystal Dunn, so you can read about her, and that'll be up maybe someday today or sometime over the weekend. And yeah, I think that's it so far. And of course, you can read the stories I filed earlier this week about NWSL's TV problems and a potential expansion to Atlanta.
Yeah, we'll finish there. The comments about Atlanta from NWSL president Amanda Duffy. Am I crazy for thinking the way her comments were phrased that she was talking about Arthur Blank and Atlanta United? I mean, she left it vague, but when she said that the ownership group has all the capabilities, it's just a matter of timing, that seemed to fit one person. Right,
yeah. The way that she sort of, I mean, kind of in the moment when she was talking to me about her, talking to the reporters that were there about it, she didn't come right out and say I'm talking about Arthur Blank, but she spoke very kindly of, we don't have a question of ownership capabilities or facilities and resources. She knows that there are some people there that would like to have an NWSL team, some stable owners. She knows that there's good facilities there. She knows that there is a soccer crazy fan base there. I think it's more of a question of when, not if. It seems like, she didn't come right out and say that, but I mean, you look at Atlanta, it just sort of seems like a no-brainer at this point for an NWSL team. Whenever they decide to expand, it seems like that might be in 2020. She's kind of said that 2020 is maybe a target for expansion, but they, like I wrote earlier this week, they have a lot of problems to sort of iron out before they get to expansion. I think they got to figure out the TV deal. They got to figure out some staffing issues. But yeah, I think when the time is right, it's a matter of, if not when, or when, not if.
Yeah, that was the way I took it as well. Mitch, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week about more NWSL stuff.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Let's take a quick break, come back, get into a couple questions from the Twitters right after this.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Final segment, hour number 1, soccer down here, Friday craziness. There's some craziness out of Texas, John. This is from the Community Impact newspaper, and Arch Bell, who writes about CONCACAF and is based out of Texas, blasted this one out. You have bills filed in both chambers of the Texas legislature that appear to be aimed to upend the deal around McCalla Place and the stadium for Austin FC.
Color me shocked.
Yeah, I mean, this seems to be the recurring thing when it comes to any stadium these days is bills and petitions and lawsuits, and yeah. So Austin's not alone in that one. Go ask David Beckham and his buddies in Miami about it. But Austin Mayor Steve Adler said this about it. He said, "This legislative attack directed at Austin and no other city, this bill will not impact stadiums around the state, is a competitor's effort to keep a Major League Soccer out of Austin. That would be a shame. The legislature should leave us alone and actually fix school finances to lower taxes." Well, I mean, okay, there you go. The interesting thing about it, and look, I don't know every single legal mechanism that is being used here. But the thing that jumps out to you is, yes, there are property taxes being waived, but this is a deal that was very similar to what was used for the last couple of stadiums built in the state of Texas. Trying to pull which ones those were. It's I don't know how true the mayor is, but there's definitely battling here. And anytime you have these situations, it could slow things down. Austin FC is set to take the field in 2021 in their new stadium. They have not talked about playing in a temporary stadium. I don't know. I mean, maybe this slows things down, and maybe it opens the door for especially a Sacramento who could come in 2021 to jump straight in.
Yes, and you know that a Sacramento, a St. Louis, they're looking at anybody that is creating any kind of an opening and sitting there saying, "Yep, we're ready to go," and you want to be at the forefront of the eyeballs of the front office at MLS HQ and show that you're ready to go and ready to rock. But obviously what you were discussing there with what's going on with Austin, not a surprise. I just still, the one quote that just sticks in my brain is that they have, hopefully finally gotten everything that might explode taken care of. And apparently that's not the case because it's now exploding in the land of public purview and government.
Yeah, it's a little different. Very different. Let's make
that
clear. The thing about the bill, the way it's written, it would only apply to facilities completed after January 1st, 2019. The Alamo Dome in San Antonio, AT&T Stadium in Arlington, both of which were developed under deals similar to this one, would not be affected. So, you could look at that and say, well, this seems a little strange that you're not going to touch the other stadiums, but you're going to touch this one when it comes to property taxes and such. So
yeah, and there's also a baseball one that's planned in the suburbs in Austin too. The single largest economic development deal in the city's history, and that's come up on the board too. So you know that they're going to look for property taxes from Perfect Game Plaza as well.
Yeah, well, if that one, it's going to be completed after that date, so it would fall under this too. So we'll see what happens. It's, again, you've got Austin dealing with this stuff. You've got Miami dealing with this stuff on a number of fronts. The group who lost out in their presentation to Fort Lauderdale that wanted to bring a USL championship team to the former Lockhart Stadium property, which had not been approved for anything about USL championship. That's why that one kind of was strange to me. They're now suing. I don't know who all they're suing. There's lawsuits being filed. Beckham and his group at Inter Miami are being tied into that. So it's complicated. Look, it's going to be complicated. Whatever happens next with the next steps with St. Louis, there will probably be something like this that happens. I think Sacramento is pretty well protected from it, although you never know. I think there have been some deals made between government and the group with the Republic that could come under question. So it's not easy to build a stadium. And there's a lot of partnerships that go into place. And when partnerships happen, there are lots of people who feel jilted by that and want to fight back in whatever way they can.
Don't you just love stadium economics and teams that want to come online? No one said there'd be math on the show.
I'm not asking you to do math. We're talking legal now. We're going straight into the legal side of it beyond math. It's complicated, and it will be complicated until the thing's built. So we'll see what happens with Austin. Sacramento is the one that I would keep an eye on because they are essentially shovel ready.
Yeah.
Once they're approved, they're ready to start building. Now, how long it takes, I don't know, but they're ready to roll. St. Louis is not, and they don't have a club around it. Sacramento does, and they can build the stadium. So Sacramento could hop in 2021. That would not surprise me a bit. If Austin can't go in 2021, do they maybe just push it back to 2022 to try to get Austin in then and Sacramento? Who knows? San Antonio is probably, but then you have the questions on would Austin be able to get anything together, period. San Antonio would probably be quite interested about those developments, and we continue the pieces moving around the chessboard. That's MLS
Ouija
expansion.
board. Yes.
No, there's nobody being talked to from beyond the grave. What?
Just magically moving pieces to fit the voices that you hear in your head.
Yeah, but no, that's just creepy. Like, that doesn't even make sense, and it's just creepy. I don't even know where you're going with that one, but hopefully there are no ghosts or spirits who are affecting the MLS expansion process. That would make it even more complicated. We'll talk MLS expansion. We'll talk about the solidarity payments and training compensation and, a match, Atlanta and Dallas. We'll talk about all that with Mike Conti from 92.9 The Game right after this.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA is a national nonprofit working to transform youth and high school sports so that every child has a positive character-building youth sports experience. PCA provides live and online workshops to train double-goal coaches whose first goal is winning and whose second, more important goal is teaching life lessons through sports. PCA also has workshops for parents and high school student-athletes. For more information, please visit positivecoach.org.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's always motivating me to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Keyboard Cat, YouTube star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Start yours today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back, hour number 2, and we found somebody who can completely explain solidarity payments and training compensation in full detail. Mike Conti of 92.9 The Game.
What did I just tell you off the air?
That you had a PhD in mathematics.
Right. Don't ask me about solidarity
and labor
payments.
discussions.
I don't understand that at all. Expansion,
I need a
yes.
good 5 minutes on solidarity payments, Mike.
Well, let's start with this. Solidarity payments refer to payments in solidarity, where payments are made to teams, and they are solidarity payments. Once
That's
again,
correct.
Those are my thoughts.
So you're saying
on
they're solid.
payments. Right. I'm clueless on that, but man, what a newsworthy night last night out of whatever Don Garber was doing.
Yeah, seriously. Let's get into expansion a little bit. You're now past the 28 number, and look, we expected that would happen once the whole Austin-Columbus thing played out. Like, we weren't surprised by this because you had to find your way out of the Columbus-Austin Anthony Precourt situation. Precourt gets his new club in Austin. Columbus stays with new ownership. Everybody wins, except the expansion process, because that took one team off the board.
Yeah.
And there's money to be made, and there are cities and owners who want to spend that money. You're not going to say no. So now you've opened the door to get to 30. 28 and 29 appear to be spoken for. I think we can say that at this point with Sacramento.
No,
and
I
Louis.
don't think I think the fix is in. It's absolutely Sacramento and St. Louis, and that's why the announcement was made with the timing that they made it last night. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Those two, I'm fine with those two being the next
Sure.
two. So that means you've got one more that's up for grabs, and you've got Charlotte, you've got Las Vegas now, you've got Detroit, you've got Phoenix, you've got San Diego, maybe San Antonio. Maybe Indy, although I think they're starting to take a little bit of a step back in some of their conversations. Raleigh, same thing. And I don't think 30 is necessarily the final number. Just what do you think as a whole about MLS expansion, what's driving it, and what they need to be wary of?
Well, the timing's interesting when they say they want the process wrapped up by 2021, which coincidentally is when this TV deal expires. And it's like I told you off the air. I'm pro-expansion. I don't worry about a dilution of the talent pool at all, as I know some people have expressed to you today. I think there's plenty of talent to go around. The $200 million expansion fee, if you add 3 more clubs, that's $600 million. Infused into the league, which will be divided among the clubs and the league. I mean, that is an enormous influx of cash. As Doug Robertson pointed out last night, Arthur Blank paid an $80 million expansion fee. And by the way, the league can probably thank Arthur Blank to a large degree for getting the expansion fee to more than double over the last 5 years. The success of Atlanta has a lot to do with it. So the existing clubs will benefit greatly from that $600 million infusion. It will make the deal more attractive to your TV partners. I think it becomes vital to make that 30th team a club that would be in the biggest market that does not yet have a club, just for the purposes of extracting as much money as possible out of the TV networks, and that city would be Phoenix. I still feel strongly that Detroit needs to be in this, but I think right now you're looking at where are your big holes in your top 20 TV markets. You've got to put clubs there. Right now, Phoenix is that big gaping hole. I still have a feeling and Doug brought this up today in a tweet. You have Miami and Austin both having stadium problems, and Austin had a major setback, I guess, yesterday. Charlie Boehm had tweeted something about that. I think Doug's kind of on the right track that by making the declaration that you're going to 30, the league has given itself either a little bit of wiggle room or a little bit of leverage over Miami and Austin to kind of push things along in those two markets to get it figured out. Because Jason's right. You have a long line of cities for that last spot. Phoenix, Vegas, Detroit, Charlotte. Charlotte's sending out surveys again about MLS at Bank of America Stadium. Raleigh. I mentioned Indianapolis, although that might be fading, as Jason says. So there are lots of cities that want in. I think the big thing is this, like we've said 100 times before. If there are owners that want to come into this league and do it the right way, as Atlanta United has done, as LAFC has done, as I think Cincinnati is trying to do, let them in, because it will make this league better. It will make this league a lot better if you have owners that are committed to making these clubs big in their home markets, if they're willing to spend as much as they can within the rules on player salaries. It's going to make the quality of play in this league that much bigger. It will infuse more TV money into this league. That makes everyone better, and it makes the on-field product better. And then we're off and running.
And I know that you've already, schedule mastered how things could stay at 34 under 30 teams, but 30 really can't be the end game in all of this. I mean, if you go to 32, you've got 8x4, and you go to divisions and things like that. So I think if you're Don Garber, Mike, you're sitting there going, okay, pay to man. All right, you want to come to the table and you want to be a part of this whole thing? I think 32 is just as easy as 30 right now.
Well, and I think really, if we talk about interested cities and owners, you could go beyond 34, and then we get to the discussion, do you want to go to 40 and go to pro rel, which I don't think we're there yet. But let's just say right now, 30 is the stopping point for the next decade. Then I think you go 6 divisions of 5 teams each. You play everyone in your division twice. You play everyone else once. You identify a protected rival not in your division. You play them a second time. 34 matches, you're all set. I think you need to keep conferences to give you a playoff structure. I think that's important. But you could also do kind of a round robin where, the Pacific and Northwest divisions, one year are in the Western Conference, and the next year they could be in the Eastern Conference, and you could kind of mix it up that way. So I'm not all that worried about scheduling right now. The one concern that I would have is I think you need to be careful with your divisional structure that you maintain rivalries. I don't think this would ever happen, but boy, would it be a shame if Atlanta United somehow did not find themselves in the same division as Orlando.
Yeah. Which Cascadia got broken up.
Yeah, and I don't think that would happen. I think they would probably really take geography into account. But I do get concerned when you look, especially at some of these teams in the middle of the country, with some of the rivalries that they've developed that aren't necessarily geographical. You've got to be very careful to maintain those. And I think also, too, if you're Arthur Blank and you're looking at a setup where you might only get Zlatan at Mercedes-Benz Stadium once every 4 years. That's a problem they wrestle with in the NFL. That's not necessarily ideal either. So you've got to be a little bit sensitive to that with scheduling. But I think, John, to your point, you can go all the way up to 34 and not really have too many problems with the schedule, because then you could just play everyone once. There's no way you're going to more than 34 regular season matches. I don't think the Players Union would ever allow that.
I don't know about that.
You think the Players Union would be okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, England plays 38 in the Premier League. Most leagues that have 20 will play 38. So I think there's flexibility. I think one reason why it was lower before was because of teams having to pay to use venues, and now
right, which is
you
less
don't really
of an
have
issue now.
that. Yeah, so it's a handful of situations where you have that. So you host another game, if you're drawing a decent crowd, you're going to make money. So that's going to factor into it too. Now, again, that's going to be a give and take with the Players Union, but they can't this is where the players union gets kind of stuck, because they talk about player development and they talk about U.S. soccer or MLS following some FIFA statutes but not others. Well, also they play fewer games than a lot of Division I professional leagues around the world, so they can't really fight that too hard. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think the counter to that would be, England plays 38 matches, but they don't have a salary cap. So there would have to be some kind of give back.
For sure. If you're going to play more matches, then there's another side about rosters being larger and all that. I think that needs to happen anyway.
Right.
But like the number of matches from it's too much. No, I don't think that part's going to factor in at all.
Right. But I think, again, I think this is exciting. I know some people are kind of cringing about it a little bit. I think it's exciting. Anytime you bring in a city that wants it, and by the way, St. Louis and Sacramento, I think, are two very good choices from the standpoint that you don't have 4 major league sports teams in each of those cities. And there is a little bit of competition against the baseball team in St. Louis, but in Sacramento, you don't have pro baseball. It fits very neatly to have MLS in the sports calendar, kind of complementing the Kings and the NBA. In St. Louis, that's a big city that kind of anchors a region where a lot of people live within probably a 2-hour radius of St. Louis. They don't have the National Football League anymore. Timing might be pretty good for MLS to go in there. I'm frankly surprised it's taken this long to get MLS in St. Louis because of the soccer heritage that city has. So I think this is exciting. If you get owners that want to do this the right way and build beautiful stadiums and pay a $200 million expansion fee, this is good for the league. If you're dwelling on stretching the talent pool, I think you're worried about the wrong thing, because the money that gets infused into the league will help every owner. I guess it'll be 30 owners in MLS go out and reinvest that money in young South American players, and it'll make the quality of this league that much better.
Yeah, it's just a different thing from a talent pool perspective. Look, we could go into expansion all day, but, we have a match tomorrow. We can talk about that a little bit, too. Atlanta and Dallas. What about FC Dallas has you a little concerned tomorrow?
Set pieces. It's something we talked about Wednesday. You're first in the league in drawn fouls, second in the league in penalties drawn. I think fifth in the league in corners, tied for fifth in the league in corners. So they get a lot of set pieces. That concerns me, because Atlanta United, the matches where they've been on the ropes a little bit this year have been the matches where they have conceded a lot of dangerous set pieces. I think one could argue set pieces probably buried them in the DC match. So that's a concern. That would be a concern if they're playing Vancouver or any team, really, as far as having to be really careful to not give up too many of those dangerous set piece opportunities. Other than that, I really like emotionally where Atlanta United is right now. We had Frank DeBoer in here at 92.9 The Game yesterday. We talked to Darren last week, Jason, you and I, and it just sounds like whatever clearing of the air they had last week prior to the New England match has this club in a much, much better place, where they're confident now. They feel better about themselves. They feel comfortable with each other now. And that's something that Frank really talked about yesterday when he was up here with Dukes and Bell. He even used the example that, when you walk into your home every night, your wife is pissed off with you. And those were his words, by the way. You can really, really feel that negative energy. He says energy. When you walk into the Atlanta United dressing room now, you feel the exact opposite of that. You feel that real positivity. And I think Atlanta United hopefully can play with a little bit of a swagger now. Last year, going into a match against Mercedes-Benz Stadium, you expected them to win. You expected them to dominate. I think what they did last Saturday in New England has changed our perspective on this year's team a little bit. We're now, I think from a fan's perspective, and certainly from my perspective as a broadcaster, we're going to walk into that stadium tomorrow feeling confident that Atlanta United can get a result, because talent-wise, I think they match up extremely well against Dallas. Dallas is a young team that's gotten results in 4 of their first 5 of their first 7 matches. So, I mean, it's not like they aren't playing well, but compared to Atlanta United, they're young and inexperienced. And they're going into an atmosphere that cannot be replicated pretty much anywhere else in MLS.
And in that DeBoer interview with Dukes and Arch yesterday, we got to kind of see the curtain pulled back on Frank a little bit. We got to see the sense of humor that's there. And, and as much as he got to talk about P.T. Martinez and style and chemistry in New England, we also got to kind of see the little bit of the needling bit with what's going on with him and Darren over Spurs and Ajax. And I think it was refreshing to see that from Frank. It's like we know it's there, but for him to have it on display, I thought was kind of cool too.
Yeah, and Frank's been a busy guy. I had a chance to visit with him before he went on the air. He's completing his move into his new condo. His parents are here. He said this is the first time his parents have been in the States since the '94 World Cup. His wife came over yesterday. They had a bird strike on takeoff in Amsterdam on Tuesday, so I guess that got pushed back by a day. His daughter's coming over. They're sending their dog over. So, I mean, he's dealing with all that stuff in his personal life. But, yeah, I mean, you definitely saw that curtain peeled back. And I thought he had some interesting comments about the selection in New England because Carl brought up, Barco, why wasn't he starting? And I thought Frank had a very interesting comment where he said that the players have to give him a reason for it to be a difficult decision. And that Barco accounted himself very well in New England, but Atlanta United has a lot of skilled players and a lot of depth, especially when it comes to attacking players, which I read to mean that Barco is not necessarily guaranteed to start tomorrow. I mean, I think he will, but I thought that was an interesting comment that when asked about Barco, he said it's up to the players to make it a difficult decision on him. Now, with Rometty being out tomorrow, it would seem obvious that you play with pretty much the same group that you played with in New England for 72 minutes, where it's Barco in the midfield with Nagbe, Lorenowitz in the holding role. It sounds like Pitti is not there fitness-wise, so you're probably still going Villalba, Gressel, Martinez up top. But I think we got some really good hints from Frank yesterday about the way that he's approaching this match from a lineup standpoint. And Frank also said something that Carlos says a lot, where they don't really care about what Dallas is showing on film, what Dallas might do. It's Atlanta United's goal to have Dallas and other teams adjust to what they do. So just an interesting interview all around. But I think we got some really, really good hints on the approach for tomorrow out of it.
Yeah, it's going to be a different type of test. I do like the soundbite of making the other team adjust, but we saw it in New England. You had to adjust a little bit to the way that New England's going to play that game. I thought they did really well. Dallas is completely different. It's as opposite as you can get from the way New England plays. Dallas has a goal of 600 passes per match. Now, they don't always hit it, but that's a team that wants a lot of possession. We know Atlanta United wants possession. How do you think Atlanta approaches? Do you think they come out and they press a little bit, or do you think they sit back and soak up pressure and try to play on the counter?
I could see either. I think if you're at home, I think if you're at home, go out and press them. Try to set the tone a little bit, make them uncomfortable, because they've got a young team that you might be able to force into some mistakes. But we'll see. I mean, I think that either approach would be valid. And it might be one of those things where they kind of feel it out for 10 or 15 minutes before committing to one of those philosophies. The one thing that we have seen over the last couple of weeks is there is enough tactical flexibility with this club and with Frank DeBoer where if they go out with the mentality to press, it's not working, they could easily transition into a team that's going to go out and try to soak it up and as you said, try to hit them on the counter. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer tomorrow. You could probably speak better to that than I. But I tend to feel like if you're home, go out and try to make them feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Because you're dealing with a young side who is going to be playing in front of 45,000, and it's not an audience I don't think that FC Dallas has been in front of all season long. And so when you have that 45,000 on top of you and your young players, there's that opportunity that if you jump on them early, that they're in a completely and totally unfamiliar situation, and it's something they got to deal with.
Sean, probably their three most solid players this year have been Pomacall, Ferreira, and Cannon. Pomacall is 19, Ferreira is 18, and Cannon is 20.
Yep.
So, let their youth play against them a little bit. Now, they're well coached. I mean, Luchi Gonzalez will have them ready to play. I thought it was interesting Dallas came in yesterday. I thought that was very, very interesting. They got to Atlanta yesterday, so they're going to be here today. I'm assuming they'll try to find a dry spot to do a training or a walkthrough, and maybe that'll be at the Benz, and then they'll play here tomorrow. This is a very big match for Dallas. I think they have been under the radar a little bit in the West because so many of those Western Conference teams have been feasting against the East. I mean, Dallas is 4-2-1. They're almost at 2 points per match, and they're fifth in the West right now because LAFC and Seattle and Houston and LA have been so good. So real opportunity for them on national television to kind of make a statement themselves that, hey, don't forget about us here in the Western Conference. We were in it for the Supporter Shield until pretty much the final month of the year last year. We're different now, but we're younger, and we're someone that needs to be taken seriously.
All right, Mike, let everybody know how they can listen to us tomorrow.
All right, 3:30 for Five Stripes Countdown, 4 o'clock kickoff on the radio on 92.9 The Game, on radio.com, on the Atlanta United app, and we'll be on Sirius XM channel 157 tomorrow.
Lots of different ways to listen to our call. It's a national broadcast on ESPN, so if you want the Atlanta United perspective, we'll have it for you.
Yeah, looking forward to it, guys. I have a good feeling. I have a really, really good feeling about this one tomorrow. Everyone very upbeat as they were going into New England. I think this is a real chance now to make a statement on national TV and quiet a lot of the doubters.
Yeah, I have a good feeling in that I think it's going to be a really good soccer match. I think you have two teams who want to play, that play good soccer, and they're going to put on a show tomorrow at the Benz. So get ready, get in your seats early, and get ready to make some noise. Thanks for hopping on with us, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. John, if you play tomorrow, take it easy on us.
Yeah. See, you got to add that H there, brother.
The imposter John Nelson might play for Dallas tomorrow. He'll certainly be
Evil John.
See you guys.
See you, Mike. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. Quick one before we get Doug Robertson on the line from the AJC to get deeper into the Dallas match on Saturday. You had a couple huge high school matches yesterday as the regular season's coming to a close. I mean, my day of playing high school soccer in the mid-'90s, we had one crowd that was, well, we had a couple that were noticeable, that were large. We had one on the road where we played Stockbridge, our cross-county rival, and we had a couple at home, senior night and our state playoff game. But the crowds and the pictures from media outlets covering in Dalton and in Gainesville was really cool to see. Dalton remained unbeaten. They're number one in the country, according to national polls, and they go into the region playoffs next week unbeaten. And the Johnson-Gainesville rivalry, you have two teams that competed for state championships last year. It's cool to see some of these pockets of the state, John, that have a thriving high school soccer scene.
Well, and you look at what was going on in Dalton. They played that one at Harmon Field. That was not at a community soccer stadium or anything like that. That was played where the Dalton Catamounts play football.
Yeah, that's where Dalton plays. I mean, this is not new for Dalton. Don't get it twisted that this was something special. This is how Dalton.
No. I'm just saying that No, but what I was building into was the fact that the crowds that you saw when they're playing at Harmon, it's tremendous to see. Now, were they playing at City Park with Johnson and Gainesville?
They were playing in a stadium. I mean, I don't know Gainesville stadiums that well, but they were playing in a high school stadium.
Okay. Because Gainesville football has been played at City Park, and City Park is one of the most historic venues in the state. So when you have thousands of people showing up for a Dalton team, number one in the country, going up against a directional Whitfield side that is just as competitive, and seeing the rivalries show up, and you're having 3,000-4,000 people show up, I think it's cool for the state of Georgia when you're seeing this kind of stuff as you're getting into region play. That wasn't like a playoff, and you're heading to Mercer or McEachern. That was last game of the regular season to decide what's going to happen when it comes to region playoffs and seeding and postseason and things like that. So, no, I love it. And I think we're, about a month away from the state championships in the GHSA?
Yeah, just under a month away. They'll be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the 16th through the 18th. One set of matches will be at McEachern. One set will be at Mercer University.
So you're looking at venues, and you were at Mercer last year, and you got to see what soccer means to Northwest Georgia, where they will travel, and you'll have some fantastic soccer that's played at Five Star. So you get to see that those teams have fans that will travel too, and they're not shy about it.
Yeah, and these were both on the boys' side. You see big crowds for the girls' games as well. Last year in the state final had Marist and St. Pius, which is a massive rivalry when you get down to it on the girls' side.
Fishbowl.
It's growing. High school soccer is growing, and I think in some communities where maybe high school football is not quite as big as it used to be, high school soccer is the thing that is replacing it and drawing these huge crowds that you used to see, only on Friday nights in the fall. It's pretty cool to see, and there's a lot of talent. It's not even just that, okay, it's happening and people are coming out to see it and it's representing the school. It's talented, good soccer being played from players who have a future in the game, whether it's in college or at the professional level, and that's only going to continue to grow. And I know we get bent out of shape about Development Academy and players who play in the U.S. Soccer Development Academy can't play high school. Look, that's the elite of the elite that are trying to become professional. High school soccer is not for that. High school soccer, I think, still is for that group just underneath that. There's plenty of players. That's not a problem. There's, a handful of academy teams in these age groups in the state. There are tons of soccer players in this state, and there's an opportunity for all of them to have these types of matches that hey, I'll bet you some of the Development Academy kids wish they could play in front of 3,000-4,000 people on a regular basis at these high school games. It's a blast, and I can't wait to do the high school state championships again. I'll be down at Mercer again this year. Not sure which classifications I'm getting yet. That might take a little bit of time to see who gets bumped where, but looking forward to it. Hope to get to see Dalton and Whitfield, Northwest Whitfield, and Johnson and Gainesville again. So looking forward to it. Let's take a break here. Let's get Doug Robertson from the AJC on. We'll get you set for Atlanta and Dallas, and we'll make our predictions right after this.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA is a national nonprofit working to transform youth and high school sports so that every child has a positive character-building youth sports experience. PCA provides live and online workshops to train double-goal coaches whose first goal is winning and whose second, more important goal is teaching life lessons through sports. PCA also has workshops for parents and high school student-athletes. For more information, please visit positivecoach.org.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's always motivating me to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Keyboard Cat, YouTube star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Start yours today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, April 19th, one day away from Atlanta United and FC Dallas. As we do when we preview matches, we get Doug Robertson from the AJC on with us. What's up, Doug?
How are y'all doing on this rainy day?
Doing
you found
well.
a turtle?
Yeah, there's a turtle crossing my backyard.
Is your
I don't
backyard
think the
flooded?
dogs have seen it. No, my backyard's not flooded. I don't think the dogs have seen him yet.
Huh. It's crazy. There's some really wild videos out there of flooding, and be careful if you do have to be out on the roads, because there are some roads that are not dealing with this very well. It is Metro Atlanta, after all. We were just talking, FC Dallas came in early, and they were going to train at Georgia State. That might be a challenge on a grass field today, but we'll see. It's a tough day weather-wise. It's a tough day for Atlanta United to train, so I wonder how they're going to handle it. Luckily, tomorrow, there's a roof, and this stuff should be out of the way. It's going to be a little chilly, but what are you expecting tomorrow? This is an interesting one in that it's a very different type of opponent than what Atlanta dealt with last week. Dallas plays, about as opposite of a style as you could find from New England.
That's true. I think, we talked last week about how we thought the press might help. The New England's press might help Atlanta United because it would create space. Well, Dallas is going to sit back and counter, try to create turnovers in the midfield that it can take advantage of and then move forward. So I think you might see Atlanta United, a little bit version of Atlanta United earlier this season where it has a lot of the ball. I think the big difference is going to be how they try to attack Dallas and get behind the lines a little bit. I think you'll see maybe two guys, Martinez dropping back and Darlington moving up, to try to create some overloads in the middle of the field, and then see some wingers trying to cut through for some short diagonal passes to try to get in behind those lines and get some crosses in.
And then obviously, Doug, looking at not having Eric Remedi means that you're going to have a Big Red, Jeff Lorenowitz involved. What are you looking at activity-wise from the midfield with Remedi out and probably Big Red in?
I think Jeff and Darlington will probably be the two. If they go with two defensive midfielders, the two guys in the middle, and I guess their job is going to try to be to control who apparently is the world's greatest midfielder, according to Matt Doyle and Paxton Pomykal. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, Dallas is a team that does want to dominate possession under Luchi Gonzalez. It's changed a little bit from the Oscar Pereja days, and Pomakal's a big part of that. He's been, I'd say, their best player so far, but their central midfield, it's not as clearly defined, I think, as we've seen Atlanta's, with Pomakal, with Grueso, and Edwin Cerrillo, homegrown signing from February, has played the bulk of the minutes. It's pushed Ja'Cory Hayes to the bench. How do you think this battle for possession is going to go? Because Atlanta's a team that, we've talked about it. They've generally wanted to control possession. The New England match was so choppy because of the Revolution that it was, a little closer to 50-50. But do you think Dallas will go against their type, or do you think Atlanta will go against their type? Because only one team can have the possession advantage here.
When we run into this in previous seasons, where it's kind of two teams that would prefer to counter a little bit, Atlanta United has usually been the one to come out on the front foot and attack. So I think that's probably what you're going to see to Saturday, especially considering the game is at Mercedes-Benz. There should be 45, 50,000 people. I'm curious about the attendance with it being Easter weekend, if it's going to be as big as it typically has been. But I do think you'll see Atlanta United be the one on the front foot, trying to attack, trying to get that first goal and put Dallas under some pressure and make them kind of do something they don't want to do.
And then, Doug, obviously we're looking at folks, and I know that we go back to New England and a lot of folks' eyes were gravitating toward Ezequiel Barco and what he was doing, but you also had Michael Parkhurst on the right. You also had Tito Villalba doing work. What are some of the other takeaways from New England that you think folks can keep an eye on heading into the Dallas match? Or was that just something that was just a one-off and you saw Parkhurst here and he did great, wipe it off and go to the next? What are you looking at from some of the other guys other than the shiny objects?
I thought Villalba had a great game. I know that he didn't score, but he did have the 2 assists. He had a couple of shots that he just hit right at Cody Cropper, or they would have gone in because he hit him so hard, as he typically does. I thought Joseph Martinez had a great game, kind of dropping back into the 10 role a couple of times and creating some plays for Villalba and for Gressel and for Barco coming down the wings. Parkhurst and Shea didn't really need to attack very much. They only got forward a couple of times against New England. I think if they are the starters at fullback, and I think you might see Franco start at fullback instead of Parkhurst for this particular game, I think you'll see the fullbacks get forward a little bit more to try to create some numerical advantages down that end of the field. And Franco has the speed to recover. I'm not sure Parkhurst has that kind of speed for 60 minutes to do that kind of thing. And I thought Nagby had a great game, first kind of starting off as a 10 and then dropping back and playing defensive midfielder in Remedi's injury. So I thought there are a lot of positives to build on, a lot of things that if Frank keeps the same formation and mostly the same starters intact, that you can look for against Dallas.
The injuries have been kind of a long-term story here, and there's a few that haven't really seemed to go away. You mentioned Escobar. He could be ready to start here. I'd say it's a safe guess that maybe he is. But you wrote about injuries. What about a guy like George Bello? We really haven't heard a lot of details. He's been out with a groin injury for most of the season.
Now, Frank again said yesterday that he hopes Bello will rejoin the team. I'm sorry, that was Remedi, that he hoped would rejoin the team on Tuesday. Bello is just really no timetable. They apparently want to make sure that he is feeling 100% before they get him out with the first team and push him in training. We saw him training by himself last week with New England, working with a trainer. We didn't see that at all this week. I don't know if it was just a function of when we came to the practice fields compared to the previous week, or if he had a setback or what. But yeah, he's just kind of fallen by the wayside, so to speak, with that groin injury. I don't think it required surgery, but it is taking a long time for him to recover.
And you mentioned recovery, Doug. Obviously, for a concussion protocol like something that Eric Remedi is going through, that's not something that you want to sit there and rush somebody back in. And it is the definition of day-to-day, because if you're fine one day, then it could pop up and affect you the next day. And that's just how concussions are. What are you hearing, if anything, about progressions and how Eric Remedi is actually doing?
It sounds like, according to Frank, that he's doing better. They hope to have him back on Tuesday. When we were able to watch the first 15 minutes of training yesterday, we saw Eric hanging out with the guys in the kind of weight room area, and he was exercising and stuff. So, I think as soon as he clears the protocol, which it sounds like is going to be very soon, he'll rejoin the team as early as Tuesday when they start practicing again. That's what Frank expects anyway. Frank, said that they know they have to take this very seriously. There are protocols in place that have to be followed, but they expect him to be back on Tuesday.
Before we get into predictions here, there's a couple other big games in MLS this weekend out west. You've got 1 versus 2 and 3 versus 4 in the Western Conference. LAFC Seattle at the Bank of California Stadium is your big game of the weekend on Sunday. But tonight, late night, you get the LA Galaxy hosting Houston Dynamo. Who do you think are the best teams in the West? I mean, is it those 4, and do any of them stand out to you so far?
Yeah, LAFC is playing well. I don't think there's any shame in losing at Vancouver on a Wednesday game when you have the big one coming up this weekend. I really like Houston, but I've really liked Houston before, and they've just kind of fallen apart. So I'm curious if that's going to happen again. It's got to be hard for that team, I would think, to kind of stay motivated when no one is showing up to their games. They don't have a beat reporter per se anymore with the Houston Chronicle after Corey got laid off last year. No one pays much attention to them. And I would think, I know they're professionals, but, when you're playing well, you'd like to be recognized for doing that. So I think that's got to be hard for them. The Galaxy's defense, I still think, is going to end up falling apart at some point in the season. But they always have Zlatan and MLS. One fantastic player can carry a team a long way. Seattle, going for 3 years now, I've never been sold on Seattle. I'm still not sold on Seattle. I know I'm running against the grain on that, but I tend to do so. I think LAFC is probably the best team. I think Houston is probably the second best team if they can just continue to find their motivation. Then Seattle, then the Galaxy.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. I think Seattle, I do worry about the age of the back line over time. Can they stay sharp? The Galaxy, Giancarlo Gonzalez is cleared to play now. He's got all his paperwork in place. That's a Costa Rican international. Has been in Serie A. He should upgrade things, although they have some injuries on the back line to deal with. LAFC, I think for me, it's just, the talent's there. The performances have been there. I agree. I don't take too much out of the loss to Vancouver, but, can they do it in the big matches? Last year they didn't. They didn't beat anybody of consequence last year. This year they've pulled off some of those wins, but you've got back-to-back with Seattle. We're going to learn a lot about those two teams over the next 2 weeks. It's crazy that the schedule makers set that up, where it's back-to-back, first in L.A. and then in Seattle next weekend.
Yeah.
I don't really like that, but, it's fun from a neutral perspective. We're going to get
What's funny about that not beating anyone of consequence is, if you'll remember, that was the knock against Atlanta United in its first season. When it was rolling up wins, people were complaining, well, they're not beating a good team. Bringing up Doyle again, I think that was his constant cry. And Atlanta United came back in its second year and, of course, beat a lot of teams and won the MLS Cup. And LAFC is kind of following that path right now, I think.
Yep. No, that's a good point. LAFC, I think last year their biggest win or win against the best team that they played was Columbus in terms of record. So, and that was, a little bit further down the table. We'll see. The talent's there. I mean, they've got the confidence right now. Can they maintain it? I think we'll learn a lot this weekend. Let's get into predictions. Dallas and Atlanta. Josh Bailey will have the Bailey Daily poll coming up on Twitter at jbailey86, presented by Steve Apolinski and Apolinski and Associates. We'll have our tailgate show with the Faction at their tailgate in the Gulch, if it's not underwater, tomorrow. I think it'll be okay by then. We'll have that coming
1?
up. Yeah, 12:30. We'll get started with you there. You can join us in the Gulch. You can also watch on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. John, let's kick this off. What do you think? What's your prediction? Atlanta, Dallas tomorrow.
I think Dallas gets one off a set piece, but I think Atlanta gets more than one. So I'll go 2-1 Atlanta United, full points.
Okay. Does Dallas score first, or is Atlanta in control of the match?
Atlanta's in control of the match. I'll go 2-1. I'll go 2-0. Then Dallas gets theirs, say, in the 75th or the 80th, like minute 82 or something like that. And then Atlanta has to close it out.
Okay. 2-1 Atlanta, according to John. Doug, what do you think? We might have lost Doug. Doug, are you there?
I think we stunned him.
Yeah, can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah,
John's prediction broke
goofy.
Doug.
Well, hey, I'm totally shocked he did 2-1.
I have to get back in the standings somehow.
Put it on a save get. Well, I'm going to go 2-1 then, so that I'll maintain a lead over you no matter what happens.
There you go, Mourinho. Nicely done.
No, actually, I was thinking 2-1, in all honesty, before you said it. Yeah, I do think it'll be 2-1 Atlanta United. I think Joseph Martinez scores a pair to kind of get off, not a slide, because he was very active last week and probably could have had a goal if he didn't inexplicably whiff on that cross from Julian Gressel. That was one of the weirder things I've seen. Not only did he whiff, but he put so much spin on the ball that it stayed right in one spot, right under his feet. But anyway, 2-1, Joseph Martinez with 2 goals.
Okay, so 2-1 predictions. And, man, full disclosure, I was actually thinking 2-1, but I'm not going to put 2-1 on the board. I'm not going to do that.
Oh, come on.
That's a cop-out. So, I am going to go with a 3-2 instant classic. Atlanta gets the win. I do think it's going to be back and forth. I do think it's going to be an excellent game. I really do. I think it's going to be a fun one. Both teams want to play, and they want to play good soccer. I think it's going to be a battle early on to see who controls the possession. Whoever doesn't win that battle, how they adjust to not having the ball is going to decide the match. And I think if Atlanta decides to soak up a little bit of pressure and hit Dallas on the counter, Dallas's defense will make some mistakes. And I think that's how Atlanta actually gets the advantage, is turnovers in the midfield and quick transitions to Tito Villalba, to Barco, to Joseph that open things up. 3-2 Atlanta's my pick in a match that, if ESPN Classic was still a big deal, would be immediately shown on ESPN Classic tomorrow night.
And Jarrett is going 1-0 Atlanta. Nervy as hell, but the defense shows well, and the players look infinitely more comfortable, and dangerous Barco coming out party continued.
All right, so we have run the gamut on the predictions, except we're all thinking Atlanta wins by 1 goal. Doug, what do you have the rest of the day over at the AJC, and what do you have leading into the match tomorrow?
Just posted a preview of the game, talking about Atlanta United and its confidence. It had another good week of training, which makes you really wonder how the training sessions were before the CONCACAF Champions League start, because I thought those were good, but apparently not as good as these. And the guys just talking about what they need to do against Dallas. And then tomorrow from the game, I'll have...
Oh, the storm might have gotten Doug again. There he is.
The first game story that you'll hopefully see will be mine, which will be posted right at the echoes of the final whistle. Then I'll come back and add some quotes and some context to that, and then player ratings, podcast, hopefully, with Jason on Southern Fried Soccer, and a sidebar from whatever happens to be of interest from the game. I'm hoping today, I don't know if it's going to be possible, to talk to Tony Annan about the solidarity payments that MLS just approved. As the former director of an academy and now the director of Atlanta United's youth academy, I thought he might have an interesting perspective on if this is actually going to make a difference in helping develop both clubs and soccer players and soccer in the United States and Canada. But he's at the GA Cup, so I'm not quite sure if I'm going to get to talk to him today.
Yeah, Atlanta United finishing up their run with the U17s out at the Generation Adidas Cup. Seattle's in the final. They've had a great run out there. I believe that final might be today or tomorrow, and it's on Twitch, on Major League Soccer's Twitch channel. That's one to keep an eye on as you're seeing more American youth teams pick up some big results here. Doesn't mean everything's changing, but it is a good step in the right direction. We'll get a little more into the solidarity payments and training compensation in our next segment, as well as you guys have had some questions about it out there listening. Doug, thanks for the time. Appreciate it, and we'll be talking to you tomorrow.
All right, we'll see y'all.
You good?
Doug Robertson, AJC on Twitter, Atlanta United News Now on Facebook. Make sure you're following. Do that during the break if you're not already following, and we'll be right back after this.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Final segment, Soccer Down here, April 19th. Could go a little while, depends on the questions we get. This is your opportunity to ask whatever you want about the week that has been laid out behind us now. The announcements yesterday for Major League Soccer about solidarity payments, about training compensation. It's complicated situations. We'll try to answer things as best as we can as we're wrapping our heads around it as well, because this wasn't expected to come down yesterday. You've had the cases filed with arbitration and sport about Clint Dempsey's transfer. You had one filed about Michael Bradley's transfer. You've got one that's still out there about DeAndre Yedlin's transfer.
That's the one that I had.
Well, as some speculated, the Dempsey one and the Bradley ones were denied. There's an issue reportedly on the U.S. soccer side when it comes to paperwork and the player passport, essentially, like, what clubs the player played for. Because, look, our youth game hasn't been built this way over time. So I think the infrastructure of how players are tracked over time just hasn't been there. Yedlin, being younger and also I think not having as many different stops in his youth career, was a little bit easier and cleaner in his player passport to see which clubs would be owed what. And that one has not been decided upon as of yet, and the speculation that's out there is that it looks like Crossfire, which is the club that he started at before he went to the Seattle Sounders, will get a favorable judgment, and that's what has kind of pushed this decision to be made. I think also the two players leaving the Galaxy, that situation has definitely had a hand in it, and just the overall direction that the league's headed in terms of being a selling league and developing players and finding that balance. And Don Garber's mentioned it about having owners invest in academies, but also not watching talented players walk out the door for nothing. This is a step to protect some of that investment.
And you're seeing the arguments that have been put up there, and it's basically restraint of trade arguments and things like that. And the player is not, according to the MLSPA and the statement that they put out, effort to inhibit player choice, doesn't address development of youth soccer, and makes plain the MLS's selective application of international rules to suit its own agenda. The MLSPA is saying that you're only going to follow some of FIFA's rules, but not all of them by doing this.
Yeah, let's start from the beginning with that one more time.
Okay. All right, and I'll go back a sentence.
Okay.
MLSPA said in their statement, today's announcement by MLS regarding training compensation and solidarity payments is a step backward for the development of soccer in the U.S. and Canada. I made that emphasis.
I disagree because I don't know how potentially more money coming to clubs and I think more of a reason to invest in player development is a bad thing. I don't think it's a step backwards by any stretch.
It is an effort by the league to inhibit player choice. Can we just stop there?
No, it doesn't inhibit player choice. I see where they're getting at, and we'll get there at the end of this because you have to kind of lump a couple things together. Doing this does nothing about specifically limiting player choice. It doesn't at all. It's not saying that players who are on academy deals are tied to that club. They can leave that academy and go to another academy. One thing that I think should happen in all of this discussion about academies, and the New York Red Bulls have talked about it and others have talked about it, is getting rid of the territorial restrictions on MLS academies. Flat out. So you want to increase player choice at the youth level, cool, do it. I'm good with MLS doing that, and maybe that's a quid pro quo when it comes to the CBA negotiations, and that's something to appease a little bit. Although, I mean, these aren't members of the Players Association right now, so I don't really know exactly why it's relevant. But youth players are not under contracts, and a lot of that's down to child labor laws. So you sign a deal if you are a player and you decide to play for Atlanta United's academy, and you're chosen and you're picked and you're rostered to play for the 2019-2020 season, the upcoming season. At the end of that season, your commitment to the academy is over. You can continue if you are accepted back. You can move on of your choice to go join another youth club, another academy. All that's still there. So it only changes when you sign that pro deal, because before, if you were Juan Pablo Torres or Zion Jones, those are two players who were here in this area and then went to Europe to sign professional deals. Juan Pablo Torres did that out of Georgia United, not Atlanta United's academy, if I remember my time frame correctly. And Zion Jones was part of Atlanta United's academy and went to Schalke. So in those cases, the clubs that they signed for in Europe would owe training compensation to Atlanta United and or Georgia United. And Georgia United was a partnership, a coalition, so that one gets really complicated. That one probably wouldn't have happened because Georgia United wouldn't have been able to sign anybody to a pro deal. So that one probably wouldn't have happened, period, because they're not set up like other youth clubs. So that one's even more complicated. The Atlanta United one, yeah, they could have requested training compensation for Zion Jones when he signed with Schalke. Now you can. That doesn't inhibit player movement. That, I think the Players Association thought, and it's interesting because these are for players who are leaving the Players Association. Like, they're not going to be part of the MLS Players Association when they move on to Europe. So it's an interesting discussion from the Players Association standpoint because it's not members that are directly affected here in every case. But from their argument, these additional fees, whether it's $50,000, whether it's $250,000, the training compensation one for a player who has not signed a professional deal yet and leaves an MLS academy and goes to sign a professional deal in Europe, is that going to break a signing potentially? If a club's looking at doing it on the cheap, yeah, it could. But if it's a Christian Pulisic, no, it's not. It's cost of doing business because Borussia Dortmund paid training compensation payments to clubs in other European countries, to clubs in Africa and Asia and CONCACAF and wherever in South America as they signed young players who hadn't signed a professional deal yet. So it's not like it's new. It's not like it doesn't happen. It's just new for players coming out of MLS academies. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Then the statement continues before the next comma and says, does nothing to address the development of youth soccer, comma.
That's not MLS's complete purview. It doesn't. Directly, no, it doesn't. You'd like to see maybe more statements to the effect that MLS clubs who receive these payments, and these payments would go directly to the club. Jeff Carlisle of ESPN clarified that the MLS club would get to keep 100% of the training compensation and solidarity payment to which it is entitled. None of that would go to Major League Soccer office. It's like a homegrown transfer where the club collects everything. This would be the same. I mean, the only real way that it could indirectly affect that would be if clubs came out and said, when we receive training compensation or solidarity payments in the future, that money will go towards academy operations only. That's really it. MLS doesn't define youth soccer in the United States. U.S. Youth Soccer does, AYSO does, U.S. Club Soccer does, and every other myriad of organizations that affect youth soccer, the U.S. Development Academy, and so on and so forth, the ECNL. We can keep going. That's youth soccer in the United States. It's not just MLS. So I think that's asking MLS to do something that they can't.
Then the final comma of this paragraph, and makes plain MLS's selective application of international rules to suit its own agenda, paragraph.
Sure. They haven't been in violation of any FIFA statutes because FIFA would have something to say about that. So that's one. MLS has said that FIFA statutes do give leeway from country to country, league to league, to adjust to their situations. And it seems like they have because, again, we haven't had any complaints. Now, there is a case at the Court for Arbitration in Sport about promotion relegation and that it is a FIFA statute and a mandate, and there's discussion that, no, it's not a mandate, it's a suggestion, and blah, 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 blah. We'll see what CAS says about that. That could change some things. But the Players Association is specifically getting into options and unilateral option years in contracts because that's been a sticking point. And that's something that I do think is going to need to get cleaned up. It's an easy cleanup. I mean, honestly, if you don't have option years, you don't have option years. and your contract is just then, if it's, let's talk about Paxton Pomacall, because that was the one we were into yesterday before we learned he had option years. If he doesn't have option years, then his contract would be up at the end of the year. In future deals, you'd have to make a decision. Do you want to sign them to a 3-year deal or a 5-year deal or a 4-year deal? And it's flat out that contract, period. There's no options. Does that change how MLS clubs sign players? Yeah, it does. It changes your strategy a little bit. You don't have an out unless you come up with another contractual term to do it, or it becomes a mutual option where either the player or the club could opt out at a certain point. NBA contracts have changed over the years. Right now, it seems like players can opt out of every deal every year and go into the free agent market. Baseball contracts, NFL contracts, they all change, they all adjust. And if that needs to be an adjustment, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem if you either force options to be mutual or limit the amount of option years you can have on a deal to 1. However you do that, I'm fine with that being a negotiating point in the CBA, and it should be, because I don't like a situation. I think Pomacall has 2 different option years. I guess he signed a 3-year deal with 2 separate option years. So if the option's picked up, and it would be for 2020, it's not picked up for 2021 at the same time. That's a separate option. That's a little much. Figure that out, and I'm fine. But that's the Players Association's main sticking point here. That's their number one thing, because all the other stuff that we just talked about doesn't necessarily affect Players Association members. The only thing that directly affects Players Association members is option years on contracts and just contracts in general. So that's it. If they want to push for promotion relegation, that could affect their members and could affect them in a positive or a negative way. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing for them. But the option year deal in that last sentence about FIFA statutes, that's the thing that the Players Association can stand on out of that statement. But that's not directly related to this. And that's why I feel like it's a little bit of grandstanding and an awkward situation where they're affecting business, or trying to affect business, of players that are not members of the Players Association. It's a weird situation all the way around. It is very MLS and United States sports. If you're looking at this from outside the United States and reading about that statement from the Players Association, your head exploded, because it just doesn't make any sense.
Now, question is, do you want me to continue going down their statement, or do you want to go to Twitter?
No, let's go to Twitter. I mean, that's the bulk of their statement. They go into detail on different things, but that's their points. And the one that is really, really relevant is that last part where they're going to say, oh, now you want to follow FIFA statutes. Well, you need to follow FIFA statutes about this. And it's just going to be a CBA negotiation. It's going to be, okay, is the Players Association going to hold fast that we want no option years in contracts, period? Okay. What are you going to give up to get that? That's where you're at. That's how negotiations go. So I think that will be a point of conversation. And it should be anyway, but now it's definitely been laid on the table.
All right. Caleb Cook and Nathan Pugh had a bit of a pro-rel discussion going on between them, and then Percy Herrera comes in.
Oh, boy.
Says, in regards to expansion and removing the salary cap, you run into a catch-22. Since pro-rel won't happen as we've modeled our league like other majors in the U.S., 30-plus teams is inevitable. Out of those 30, you'll have maybe 8 that will go and be the PSGs and Real Madrids of the U.S.
Okay. I think the pro-rel will never happen in the United States side of things has diminished a little bit over the years. I think you're hearing things from MLS that, well, maybe there's ways to look at this. I don't think it will be in a traditional structure. No, I don't. I think it will be in an MLS 1, MLS 2 type of structure. I do think it will be all under MLS. Now, U.S. Soccer is going to have to sign off on that if MLS is going to add a second division, unless they're going to create a higher division than a first division. I don't know. Who knows?
Super division.
It could happen. I mean, the Premier League broke away from the first division in England, and that's how it went down. So, and that's happened in other countries too. I don't know how that's going to play out. There is a big difference in the size of this country and other countries about the number of teams. That's something that absolutely has to be factored in. You know, this is not a country like England that is the size of a couple states, maybe?
Yeah.
Where you have 100-plus professional teams. You're going to get to where you have 100-plus professional, sustainable teams in the United States, for sure. You're not quite there yet, to be absolutely honest, where you're not including second teams. You're not quite there. You will. It's going to happen. The growth of the USL Championship, the growth of USL League One, the growth of the NISA when it gets off the ground, and NPSL Pro, and whatever else happens to have professional teams, you'll get to that. There's going to be a process where some of them aren't sustainable early on, but you'll get there. And the MLS teams are doing it at a level that nobody else is anywhere near right now, and that's just a fact. The size of this country is what has led the other leagues, who those sports haven't really had a history of promotion relegation as much as soccer. I mean, you do have it in basketball in Europe and South America because it fits into their sporting culture. You haven't had promotion relegation here in any significant level ever. It didn't happen with baseball, which was the first major professional sport to develop in the United States. They went into a minor league system outside of the National League and then the American League, and you had others that tried to pop up and didn't succeed. They went differently than the Football League did in England. So it's just not part of the culture. USL did it one time in 1997 when the A-League merged with the USISL, which is now corporately the USL. Part of that merger, because the A-League was second division, the USISL's professional league was third division. They merged into a large A-League. The A-League had 6 teams in 1996, and then I think 1997 there were 24. Well, part of that whole deal was, okay, now the USISL's Division III professional league that is left over from the teams that moved up to the second division, that winner will automatically be promoted into the A-League in the following year. It's automatic they happen. That team was promoted, lasted 1 year in their location, then moved and went out of business. And it never happened again. So that's your history of it. You have it on lower scales, on local leagues. Yeah, you've had it on some regional leagues, yep. But on a national league process, it's a brand new thing for the United States. I do think it can happen within the Major League Soccer structure, but it's going to take a corporate restructuring. It's going to take profit sharing. It's going to take a lot of different things that would be very different for the owners who have bought in. That's going to take time. That doesn't mean you can't have a first division of this size because of the size of the country. Should you, because it's done in England one way, because it's done in France in one way, because it's done in Germany one way, should that mean that you could only have 20 first division teams in the United States? I don't see why that's just a foregone conclusion. I mean, am I crazy for thinking that way, John? Because the only other country of this size would be a Russia, but their first division, it's all in one side of the country. Like, you don't have this type of setup where you're flying across the country on a regular basis for top-level play. It just doesn't happen. Germany, I mean, your third division is regionalized. I don't think your second division is. I think your third is. Other leagues do that, and it's a much smaller country. Like, you're not going to leave that many markets out in the United States, no matter which way you go. I don't see that happening.
No. And, I mean, Ukraine has divisions, but they're
big.
No, the Ukraine, when it comes to even league size, I want to say it's
No, not even league. I'm just talking like mileage. I'm
geography.
talking size of the country. Like the United States with thriving teams in Atlanta, in Los Angeles, in Seattle, plus your Canadian partners in Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal, you're talking about a scale that you don't really have. Brazil would be probably the closest.
Yeah.
And Brazil's structure for their league play is so all over the place, where you have a national league, you have state leagues, you have a state cups, you have a national cup. It'll make your head spin. There's no way that's going to get over here in an American sports context. It's so confusing. This is the way that it's easy for people to digest. And as I think we've said a few times this week, if soccer wants to grow in the United States, yes, there is a soccer component of the audience that has not embraced Major League Soccer. There is. But the true growth is bringing people to the sport who are new to it.
Yes. Yeah.
And the more complex it is to wrap your head around it, I think the longer of a process that is.
Were you thinking of the Sacramento Geckos? Was that the team?
Yeah, because they were in New Mexico before that. And they were one of the... Well, first off, I mean, they went out of business in 2 years. Second, they had to move. Third, they were one of the worst teams ever in the second division in the United States.
0-28 and one shootout loss. Goal difference of -75, allowing 91 goals and only scoring 16 in 28 matches.
That's in Sacramento, right?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
Sacramento in 99.
Yeah, the year before that in 98, I think it was even worse when they were in Albuquerque. I think they were the Albuquerque Geckos.
Yep, five wins, one
so they did win
shootout
5.
loss,
Okay.
22 losses, goal difference of -61. They gave up 100 goals in 28 matches.
Yeah, that was your reason why not to have promotion relegation anymore, because it didn't work. It was bad. So, but that's a long time ago. It's a different time now. I honestly, truly do think it will happen within an MLS structure, and whether that means MLS and USL combine or partner or have a strategic alliance, maybe, or MLS buys out the top USL teams to fill out their first division and second division, whether it's 40 or 44 or 48 or 50 teams or 56 or 50, I don't know, or 60, who knows? But I think it will happen at some point. I don't know when. I don't think it'll happen soon. I think there's a lot of things that have to happen at the MLS level for that to happen. I think there's still questions on expansion to get to 30, let alone 32. I think there's also questions about expansion in the USL Championship and USL League One. And USL has a lot of filling out to do at the League One level and at the championship level on the independent side of things. So there's a lot of things to get there, and that's okay. But the expansion side of MLS, like, I'm not surprised by going to 30 at all. I mean, we basically predicted it as a solution to get out of the Columbus-Austin situation without a ton of lawsuits. And it's all worked out outside of Austin's stadium situation, what they'll have to fight it out in the courts and in the State House. It's worked out as well as it could. Columbus keeps their team, which was the one thing we definitely wanted to see out of this, and that's happened. Austin now has to prove that they can get things done and they can join the league. Sacramento and St. Louis are next up to prove that they're ready to join. I think Sacramento's all but done now that they have the financial wherewithal to do it. St. Louis, everything sounds great. I think they'll be a great addition. I agree with Mike Conti that St. Louis, with NFL gone, with no NBA, is a perfect market. And with their soccer history, I think they'll be a smash. I think it'll be huge. Who's next? Charlotte's going to make a lot of sense. Vegas is now in the mix. Detroit makes a lot of sense.
New stadium.
Phoenix makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of things that make a lot of sense. And remember who was sitting with Mark Davis as that new stadium was trying to get approved? David Beckham.
Hello, Mark.
I mean, one thing is, and he's been asked about it, and he's denied it. One thing I always thought Vegas could be the escape hatch for Miami if it does all fall apart, which could still be the case. Otherwise, it could just be, hey, look, this is a good investment for you. You should build your stadium with soccer in mind, and it sounds like they are. So there you go. We'll see how that goes down. But Charlotte, Vegas, Detroit, Phoenix, San Diego, all want in. I don't think the $200 million price tag is going to scare anybody away, not with the recent Forbes valuations. Everything's heading in the right direction. So we'll see what happens on the expansion front. What other questions do we have as we're deep into stoppage time?
We have some, and we have some, so there's going to be a bit of a scroll here.
Let's do it.
Eichmann. The bigger news was solidarity payments. Going after big government and U.S. labor laws isn't going to be cheap.
The solidarity payment side. So again, so we're keeping them clear because I've seen a lot of people lump them together, and they are two different payments. The training payment is what happens when a player signs their first professional contract outside of the country that they developed in. The solidarity payment is when a transfer is involved after a player signed a professional deal. Okay, so keep that in mind. The solidarity payment, and this has been part of the, well, both, honestly, and you'd have to ask U.S. Soccer where it stands. U.S. Soccer had been against MLS clubs seeking and making these payments. That had been the case going back to the early days of MLS when the Players Association, I think as it was forming, filed a lawsuit against the league, and they involved the NFL's player union involved in this as well, and it was challenging the single entity structure. But according to members of U.S. Soccer's board along the way, after that all was ruled as, yes, you could have a single entity structure and it was not a restraint of trade, that U.S. Soccer always said you didn't have solidarity payments, you didn't have training compensation because of some part of that agreement, some part of that lawsuit. Now, that's been kind of brushed to the side in recent years, and it's been more about the potential for issues with child labor laws. There's been questions about antitrust suits coming out of this. The MLS Players Association has said they would not file one, and I believe they could not file one. They have said they would support one if it was filed. U.S. Soccer, well, MLS feels like they're protected legally on this. U.S. Soccer has been, I think they've had cases and they've won them. U.S. Soccer doesn't really want to have another case because they've got a few out there already. They don't want another one. But they feel like they would be protected as well, and that's one reason they've stayed neutral in all of this. So that side of it's complicated. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are about that element of it, John, and where you fall on those potential things and how much you've dug into it. But yeah, I mean, anytime we see something like this, we're seeing it on stadiums, we'll see it on anything that pops up, there's the potential legal situation that could arise from it.
Always. And for me, as we were going through the MLSPA statement, I don't see how it inhibits player choice. The development of youth soccer, I was like, okay. And, I understand why the MLSPA decided to sit there and say it was a selective application of international rules. MLSPA's point of view when it came to the development of youth soccer, it says it strongly supports efforts to improve the youth development, but we do not believe that placing the burden to fund these efforts solely on players is a sensible approach.
That's not true.
See how
that's not
case.
True, and that was probably the number one thing about the Players Association statement that I really didn't like. And again, it's because so much of this is unknown and new, and people are learning about it for the first time. It's a very misleading statement. The players do not come out of pocket for any of this. That has nothing to do with it. Now, could a club who is negotiating either a contract for a player who developed in the United States and had not signed a professional deal yet, or a transfer, could a club say, well, we're going to pay you less because now we have to pay this? Yeah, because that's negotiating. Like, that's going to happen. If the Players Association wants to take that and say, well, that's taking money out of the player's pocket, that's a different argument than the way they framed it. The way they framed it is like the players are going to have to make these payments, and that's not true. That's just not true. So I want that to be clear because that's one that could easily get sideways. On the solidarity payment part, it's not a hard and fast rule about the 5% of the transfer fee being withheld and paid by the club receiving the player proportionally to the clubs involved in that player's training. It can be negotiated. So, okay, if Steve Barnes is going from, let's say, no, okay, let's actually use a real life example. Let's say Ezequiel Barco. Ezequiel Barco gets transferred to Monaco, and it's for $20 million, just making round numbers up. All right, so say that happens next year, or let's say that happens at the end of the season. Okay, cool. So we know that the age frame we're talking about. All right, it's $20 million, up to 5%. Now, one thing we don't know is what percentage of a sell-on fee Independiente might have on that deal. I don't know if that's never officially public. I remember there was discussion about it. I don't know if there was a consensus as to what that was. That would preclude anything else on Barco. If Independiente is contractually obligated to, let's say, 10% of the transfer fee. Okay, that trumps all this. Cool, done. Now, does Independiente have any agreements with Barco's youth club before he joined Independiente? I think he joined them at 14 or 15. Probably, because usually that stuff is already lined up. But if they don't, maybe whatever club he started with outside of Rosario could try to make a claim. They would probably make a claim on Independiente's portion of it if their amount trumps whatever would be the training or the solidarity payment portion. See how complicated this stuff gets? When you have a young player who's played at multiple places, let's talk about. Let me think of one that could fall into this. Let's say a Jackson Conway. I was going to
say Bello.
Deal. Let's say Bello. Okay, Bello works. Let's say Bello signs a deal in 2 years with a European club for $20 million. Okay,
Everton.
It doesn't matter, whichever club. So he signs a deal, $20 million's coming into Atlanta United. Now, Atlanta United wouldn't have any kind of an agreement with another club because he came from Atlanta United's academy. Before that, he played with Alpharetta Ambush. I don't know what ages he played for SSA and what kind of claim they might have, but it would depend on what years he played because it's from his 12th birthday on. So in this scenario, you could have a situation where, okay, Atlanta United gets this money. Now, since they signed the player from their own contract, you're not getting training compensation for your own player, so that part doesn't play in. But Alfreda Ambush or whoever could file for a solidarity payment for that deal. Now, again, there's not a set number here. So that's where you get into an arbitration situation, or the clubs agree to that before it goes to an arbitration. You know, Atlanta United could say, well, okay, you're contractually obligated according to FIFA solidarity payments to X amount, blah, blah, blah. We're going to give you this flat amount. And the club agrees, and then everybody moves on. Because that's generally how it happens. It's not like this doesn't happen every day in the transfer market. It just hasn't happened for U.S. clubs. So now it's in play, it'll get handled, it'll get sorted out. It's honestly not going to be as big of a deal in terms of sorting out these types of situations as people are making it out to be, in my opinion. I think it's just another potential revenue source and another potential cost that MLS clubs will have to be ready to deal with.
Also on the board, Percy Herrera says that we'll kick ass in CONCACAF, but fandom will decrease for every team not spending enough to stay relevant, which means we'll have the same teams winning year after year after year, and then the shrug shoulders emoji from the iPhone.
What can you do to change that, though? That's what's hard about it is, every sport that has a salary cap, which league has the most rigid salary cap? The NFL?
Yeah, because the NBA has bird exceptions and veterans exceptions and things like that. NBA has luxury tax
cap, right?
Yeah. It's a hard one. Actually, NHL probably does. NHL probably has the toughest because you have both a ceiling and a floor.
That's the difference. Now, the NFL, you're not going to be able, because of the interest in it right now, to be spending a whole lot less than the max. Like, pretty much everybody goes to the max. Not everybody, but pretty much. The NHL, because you had situations like that. Hello, Atlanta Thrashers, where you had teams that just weren't spending money, flat out. So you have a ceiling in place. Now, I would be completely fine if MLS added a ceiling as part of their expanding how much teams can spend. I'd be fine with that. I'd actually be really good with that. I think that would be a necessity because then it would force teams to at least have to spend to a certain amount. But even in the NFL, which has a pretty hard cap where everybody's spending roughly the same amount of money, you have teams that are good year to year. You have teams that are good over an extended period of time. You have an anomaly like the Patriots. And you have teams that just cannot figure it out and stink for long periods of time. That happens because of the quality of the scouting, the quality of the acquisitions, luck. Just so many things factor into it. So good teams are going to hire good people. Good people are going to make good signings. That will happen no matter how the spending changes. What I wonder, and this is where you take a step further if you're going to go down a pro-rel rabbit hole, is, okay, if you are a team that can't get it together in England and you stink 1 year, you run the risk of getting relegated. That's going to keep your fans' interest. Yeah, they're going to be interested. They're going to be angry. They're going to be pretty ticked off. And if you get relegated, is there any guarantee that those fans ride it out with you? They generally do for a year, if I'm not mistaken. Generally, the attendance is good for teams that get relegated the year after they get relegated. But if they stay, it changes. They become a different club. Am I wrong in saying that?
No. I mean, if you look at, and I'm going to the table right now, since it is Good Friday, we do have action going on across the pond, and the greatest of the great escapes is still ongoing in League One. Thank you very much.
You need to explain that to people who don't understand what you were just talking about.
As a member of the Dons Trust in AFC Wimbledon in League One 2 months ago, the team was dead and buried 10 points from safety. Going into today, they were only away from safety on goal difference, having been undefeated in 6 of their last 7 matches after losing 9 in a row at one point to start the season. But if you look at the championship, let's just look at the teams themselves that we have. Norwich, right now, top of the ladder, 4 points clear with, let's see, how many matches? With 4 matches to go, they have a 4-point lead. Norwich has been one of those teams that has yo-yoed in and out of the Premier League, but they've been in the championship for a couple of years. And Norwich's fan base has always been there. Always. Can't buy a ticket. Then you get into, how do you want me to classify this looking at the championship?
Well,
teams that have been recently relegated?
Let's talk about a club like Villa.
Okay.
So they were down, this is the first year they're down, right?
Second, because they had an ownership change, and it was in that ownership change when they were relegated.
Okay, so
Tony
this is year
Shee.
2. What has their attendance been like in year 2 after being relegated?
Well, considering that they've won 6 in a row and they are currently 5th in the table, I would imagine it's fairly stable from where it's been in the past.
But see, that's the thing. I don't know if and I'd love to dig into this, and this is maybe a Soccer Over There extended run where we do some research, because Leeds over time. Now, Leeds is on their way back, and it looks like they might get back this time. But Leeds' attendance, they became a completely different club. Now, then they had investment come in and brought them back to where they want to be. But when they were in the second division and even the third division for extended periods of time, they were not drawing what they did in the Premier League in the early 2000s. Flat out. Wasn't happening. So when you talk about the fan interest side of it, like, would American fans respond to a relegation battle in a positive way? I don't know. It's new, so it's kind of hard to call. It's kind of hard to predict. Would they respond in the same way that they generally respond to a playoff chase? That's not new. I think everybody gets the sense of that, and generally that's been a good thing in this league. A lot of it is speculation, to be perfectly honest, but I don't think there's any way to truly guarantee, that every team going into a season has a chance to win the trophy at the end of the playoffs. I don't think it's possible, no matter what rules you put in place. Now, the question that then comes up is, how much do you loosen the rules to allow teams that have more resources to build better teams? Because money talks. How much do you want to loosen that, and how much further do you want to get away from trying to make sure you have parity? That's where MLS is, and CONCACAF Champions League and the potential to win that is something that will drive that decision. Is that a number one priority? If it is, you got to spend more money. If it's not, then okay, how much better do you want to get? So how much are you going to allow teams to spend more?
Yes.
I don't know.
And
there's no real hard and fast answers here, to be honest.
No. Championship attendance figures coming into this match week: Villa on top in the league at 35.5. Leeds is second. Nottingham Forest, who is mid-table at best, is third. Derby County, who is challenging for a playoff spot, is fourth. Norwich is fifth. Sheffield, who is challenging, is sixth. Stoke, who is not, is seventh. Sheffield Wednesday is eighth. Then you have, finishing out the top half, West Brom, Middlesbrough, Birmingham City, and Bristol City, all over 20,000 on average.
But no, this is what I'm asking. It's not about, okay, they have the best attendance in the championship. That's great. That's wonderful. When they were drawing 36,000 in 2014 in the Premier League, and they're drawing 32,000 now in the championship, that's a difference.
Yes,
that's the point. That's what I'm saying. So
yeah, 10%.
Now, they've held fairly firm from 2016 when they were relegated, when they drew an average of 33,690, to now where it's 32,097, which is pretty flat from last year. It's pretty much the same. So they've held pretty firm. Now, over an extended period of time, would they? We don't know. I mean, a club that would be in that type of situation, maybe a Middlesbrough, if we want to look at them. So they're a prime example of, now they've bounced back, which is really interesting, and I'm sure there's probably more details here at play. 2009, they were in the Premier League. Now they had their 1 year back and then got relegated again. In 2009, when they were in the Premier League, they drew 28,429 on average. Their first year in the championship, where they finished 11th, they drew 19,948. That's almost 10,000 difference. They fell all the way in 2014 to 15,748. That's almost cutting it in half. Now, when they came back to the Premier League in 2017, they drew 30,449. This year, that's dropped about 5,000. They're at 25,544. So
just outside the playoffs.
Yeah, but it's not about that. Are fans going to respond to a team that's been relegated in the same way? Historically, they don't. Now, in a short-term situation, they do. But Middlesbrough losing half of their attendance is a big thing. I mean, going from 2005, where they finished 7th in the Premier League, they were averaging 32,000 fans per match, down to 2014, where they finished 12th in the second division. The year before, they finished 16th. That could have had a hand in 14 dropping even more. They go from 32 in 05 in 10 years to 15 in 2014. Those are the types of things that make it difficult for clubs to bounce back.
Right.
And those
Did
are
you look at
challenges.
Newcastle?
Newcastle hasn't spent any extended period of time in the second division. They've been there twice for a year.
Yep.
And, hey, okay. Now, 2017, they went up in attendance. They went 51 in the second division, where they won the championship, from 49, where they finished 18th in the Premier League the year before. But let's look at the time before that. 2009, they finished 18th in the Premier League. They averaged 48,750. That was down just about 2,500 from the year before, where they finished 12th, where they were 51,000. So 51,000 in 2008, 49,750 in 2009. They get relegated. 2010, they averaged 43,388. They bounced back to 47,718 when they were promoted back in 2011. And they got up into the just over 50, and they've stayed there. But they had a drop too. It happens. So these are things to keep in mind when these things change. But that gets away from Percy's overall point about, if you expand the spending, you will have Atlanta, you will have Toronto, you will have Seattle, you will have LAFC, you'll have the Galaxy, you'll have NYC, you'll have potentially a Columbus with the type of, just resources their ownership has. Others, too, where you have owners who could spend the money that they want to spend. But you'll have a set of clubs that can spend more than others, period. It doesn't guarantee they're better, but it gives them more chances to screw up. If you have more money, you have more, more outs, basically. You have more plays.
Yep.
You got more cards in the deck. You don't have to hope for that miracle card on the river if you're playing poker. You've got more opportunities to fix things if you have an injury, if you have just a bad signing. Because even the best clubs with the best scouting will make mistakes in signings. It happens. More money gives you more chances to not screw up or to fix when you screw up. Doesn't mean you're going to be good. Less money means you got to get things right to be among the best. I think Houston is a prime example of that. If you allow teams to spend more, you're going to create more of a gap between your Torontos and your Houstons. It's just a fact. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the league? And that's what the league, as a group of owners in a single entity structure where they are all under the same umbrella, this is what they're going to have to come to grips with in their Board of Governors meetings. What do they want to do? Are they happy with where the league is growing? Is the product good enough to bring in more money on TV, to do the things that they want to do to make more money? Because, yes, they all want to make more money. Or do they need to spend more money to be more competitive in CONCACAF and put a better product on the field to get better TV money coming in? Maybe they do. That's the decision. They're going to have to make that decision because that's going to create a bigger gap, too. These things aren't easy.
Tafka, in discussing the expansion fee, says, don't look at the expansion fee as merely a toll to proceed down the road. It's money put forth as a shared investment.
Yeah, and especially in the MLS structure where it's a single entity. It's just, they're all together in this. So it's adding more money to the pot. It's also accounting for some of the losses for people who've been there longer. It also accounts for the dilution of the shares in Soccer United marketing, which has been lucrative. So it's the cost of doing business. And if you want to join the party, you got to buy the ticket. And that ticket gets more expensive the more teams that are there, because that means there's more people who get some of that money that comes in. It's kind of logical when you break it down to that degree.
Eichmann. Retraining compensation. I'm now putting my money on the land acquisition being for an academy residency program in Atlanta United.
It could be part of it. It absolutely could be part of it, because that's something that the Red Bulls have talked about with their next training facility. It's something that Philadelphia does. It's something that others will do. And if you have the training compensation and solidarity payments now in motion, you eliminate territory restrictions on signing players to your academy, which I think will happen, then you're going to have a need for potentially a residency program. Now, you could do it other ways, and clubs do. I mean, Dallas has done it for years and years and years, where they've had partnerships with local schools and local families and basically like host families and that sort of thing. That can take you so far. But if you're really going to do it and you really want to look at like a Barcelona La Masia situation, yeah, you're going to need residency. That could be part of it. I still think it's more along the lines of, and there's enough land to where it could be both, honestly, but I think they're going to need more offices and more locker room space if they add more academy teams, or more importantly, if they add women, either in the academy or on a professional side. There's just not enough room right now to do that. So they needed room to grow, and how they grow is the question, but you're going to need more just building space and locker room space, period.
Tony Jabroni is a big fan of the compensation and payments MLS is asking for. Hopefully it will cover the other non-MLS academies, so they will also benefit from this. Do you think the LA Galaxy helped to push for this?
Well, the non-MLS academy thing, I do think the Galaxy helped push for it, among others. I don't think they were the only ones. The non-MLS academies, I mean, MLS has no say over them, so it's up to them to decide how they want to do it. Now, I think they have learned from the mistakes that were made in the Bradley and Dempsey cases, and I think U.S. Soccer has learned from the mistakes in their record keeping that showed in that. And these are things that are going to have to change for your non-MLS academies to be able to claim this properly. It's important because it is a level of administration that is needed that, look, some of these clubs are run by volunteers. And you're asking them to deal with FIFA player passports and transfer systems that are, it's like speaking a completely different language. So that's going to be an issue for some clubs. There's no obligation from the MLS academies to help the other clubs learn how to do this. If they want that money, they're going to have to do it themselves. Now, MLS did make a point that when these opportunities come about claiming training compensation or solidarity payments, that they would only be requesting theirs. They would not be requesting for other clubs that are not MLS affiliates, that are not their own. So if Atlanta United is claiming a training compensation for a situation like Zion Jones, they're not claiming it for... See, Georgia United's such a complicated thing. It's not a traditional club. So whatever club he came from before that, like they would not be claiming it for that club as well and then disperse a payment. You see what I'm saying? So it would be on that club to claim that at that time. Now, that's going to mean that some traditional youth clubs who have never thought about things this way are going to have to get up to speed pretty quick.
Tafka, who had to dump out at 10:15 and was going to listen to the rebroadcast, and found out that we're still going. And he thought that the fact that we're still going is awesome. Says, and this is two sentences here, if a European club doesn't want to pay $50,000 to $100,000 for a prospect, then they, in all caps, don't consider them a prospect. They consider them a lottery ticket, disposable if nothing comes of it fairly quickly. Part 2. Sometimes it may be more than that, but I doubt it would be often, in quotation marks. By way of example, Gloucester is worth, according to Transfermarkt, £45,000. That's a good benchmark. The trick will be incentivizing these 18-year-olds that MLS is both properly lucrative and beneficial to development as a pro.
Yeah, there's a few tricks here. So Chris Gloucester is a good situation to bring up. So he did not sign a professional contract. Let me make sure. Let me get this correct. Yes, he did not sign a professional contract with the Red Bulls. He played in USL on an academy deal. He was the youngest American to start in a USL game when he did in 2016. He signed for Hanover in 2018. So he would have been a prime example. He only made one appearance for Red Bulls 2, and it was that one as an academy player. So it's not so much his value because he's on the training compensation side. So he's signed. You could sign him to $1,000 a month. You could sign him to $10,000 a month. The training compensation payment is the same, period. And it would go back to his 12th birthday and where he was at those times. Now, I don't know for sure. I'm looking at Wikipedia for this, and this would not fly in the Court of Arbitration for Sport or the FIFA transfer system because there's no official FIFA documentation of where he was at these times. This is something that a club like FC Jersey Galacticos, who he's listed with from 2011 to 2013, would have to be able to show that, yes, he played here. No, he did not pay to play here. He played for the FC Jersey Galacticos at 12 years old. Okay, they would be, if I'm reading everything right, they would be then obligated to 10,000 euros because it is the confederation where he is signed is what determines the amounts, because it is what that club, and in this case Hanover, would have spent to develop a domestic player on their own. It's not based off U.S. numbers. It's based off he's signing to a German club, so that would be under the UEFA numbers. Okay. And I believe it would be 10,000 euro for his 12-year-old season at FC Jersey Galacticos. After that, he came to New York Red Bulls either at 12 or 13. So Galacticos might get something. Red Bulls would get his time there, which would take him up to, he signed for Hanover in March of 2018. I don't think he could have officially signed until July 28th of 2018, which is his birthday. So he would then be getting money from his year 13, year 14, year 15, year 16, year 17 with the New York Red Bulls. And it scales up. So, like the younger ages, obviously, if you're training a 12-year-old, you're not putting as much money into if you're training an 18-year-old in terms of developing them as a pro. So, Galacticos would get 10,000 euro. I think for his last year at Red Bulls, he might get 90,000 euro. So, you add it all up, if it's 10,000 euro for his first 3 years, so that's 30, then I think there's a 40,000 number for a year or two, and then the 90,000 number. So let's say it's 90,000, it's 40, it's 10, 10, 10. So that's 30, that's 80, that's 90, that's 110, that's 200,000 euro. That would be something that Hanover would have to pay to a combination of the New York Red Bulls and FC Jersey Galacticos. That would essentially be the transfer fee for this player because he wasn't under contract. This is his first professional deal. Now, would they want to do that? In Chris Gloucester's case, they probably would because it's probably a pretty good number for them to bring this player in. They might not. Maybe only like a Bayern Munich or a Borussia Dortmund would pay that type of money to sign a player. It might limit some opportunities for some players who go over to Germany and to other clubs, other countries in Europe. That might not necessarily be a bad thing because for every Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie, we can go through 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 different players each year who go sign for a third division club in Romania or a third division club in Germany or a second division club in Belgium or so on and so forth and don't make it. So limiting some of those isn't the most horrible thing in the world. Only restricting it to where players are gonna go to clubs where they're definitely valued and they have the potential to really make it. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, those players, then the question is, do those players who would have signed for a second division Belgian club, would they decide to sign for an MLS club or a USL Championship club instead? And that's the question. Or Liga MX Club or whoever who would then pay that. So these are the things that are going to come up now. Basically, you're not going to be able to sign a player out of an American academy, especially an MLS academy, for free anymore. It's going to have to be something paid. Now, are European clubs going to be willing to do that? Some will, some won't. And it just changes the marketplace. That's all.
All right, here we go. A couple of predictions.
Okay.
ATLUTD fan number 1 says 3-0 Joseph Barco Tito on a 5-stripe Friday. Ricky Ricardo, 3-1 Atlanta Barco Joseph Pitti finally opens his MLS account.
Would love to see
Percy Herrera says the local team stays winning. And Thomas Gwynn with one of the harder hitting questions of the morning. Sea otters or sea lions?
Otter's easy. It's not even close. Always the otter. The sea lions are great, but otters are the best.
John Robert White, since we didn't get into it with either Mike or Doug, so we'll get into it with you. Predicted starting 11 for tomorrow.
I'm going to think that Escobar gets the start on the right. I think LGP and Miles start in the middle. I do wonder if Parkey might get the start on the left in a game like this. I think he could. And it's nothing against Breck Shea. I think it's just a different kind of game. Now, the question's going to be, Shea's more comfortable on the left side than Parkhurst would be. Does that outweigh Parkhurst's soccer IQ and ability to deal with a good Dallas attack? It might. It very well could. But I'm for some reason I'm leaning towards Parkhurst getting the start on the left. I think Frank de Boer really wants him in the team, and I do think that LGP and Robinson have proven to be better options in the middle, but I think Parkhurst could end up playing on the left. Or it could be Escobar over on the left and Parkhurst on the right. That could just be a matchup thing, and that could honestly change in the match. So let's say that's the back four. Lorenowitz as your number 6. Nagbe and Barco as your 2 central midfielders. Nagbe will be the mix, the box-to-box. I think it is Villalba, Gressel, Joseph up top. Pitti, I think, does come off the bench. If there's a change, I think it's Pitti starting for Gressel. If there's a change to the group that finished out. But yeah, I do think it's going to be Parkhurst, LGP, Robinson, and Escobar starting in the back. Wild guess.
All right. Yeah. Nathan Pugh says that since all of this has upset the players' union, then I'm all for solidarity payments, etc.
Not touching that one with a 10-foot pole, Nathan.
Yep. And with Train's discussions about the TV money, Train's thinks winning should still provide a huge cash bonus, though, much like the Premier League does.
Yeah, that would be another way to structure things, and that would be an interesting conversation in this next TV deal. Would be to, and I wonder if TV partners here would even think about that sort of thing, is to basically scale the payments based off where you finish. Would love it. Would absolutely love it. I think it's a great idea. It's completely foreign to the way that our professional sports and our TV contracts have been done in the United States. Doesn't mean it can't happen. I'd love it. I think MLS is a league in a structure that could do that. And it would add some excitement. And it would add, I think, again, that motivation for, hey, it's not just good enough to be here and collect a check. You want more money? Put a better product on the field. And that's only going to increase the TV revenues down the road. So I'm all in favor of that. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Peacocks and Allison Cupertino always vote Otter.
It's easy. It's Otter.
And Peacocks also wanted to know what is on the Easter menu from the Wrong Answers cookbook from me. I'm guessing it's probably going to be something along the lines of spaghetti, possibly a sub. From a sub sandwich location to be determined, or it could be something akin to a TV dinner, or I may go off the board completely and do something like pizza or Italian. It's still in debate. It is still in flux, and also We have had discussions from folks on the timeline about the 2019 SDH collection of both scarves and golf shirts, actually, that folks actually want to buy our golf shirts.
Y'all are crazy.
That we have out.
We will put together a 2019 scarf. It has been lost in the shuffle of all the craziness of 2019 so far. It will happen. Maybe a summer scarf, since we're getting into that time of year. Maybe we go summer scarf this time. We haven't done one of those. Let us know your thoughts on summer scarves. Do you like them? Do you not like them? Are they just horrendous and you want no part of it, or do you really care? Let us know what you think about
something
that.
Maybe Chris Jericho-y or something like that. Who knows?
No. It's just a summer scarf, John. Just a simple summer scarf.
Okay, John Roper again. Has there been a period of racism from crowds in MLS like we're seeing in Serie A and the Premier League? If so, what were the consequences?
Not that I'm aware of. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Nothing to this level, nothing to this scale that I've ever heard of or heard about. You do have the issues that have been circulating this season about members of one of the NYCFC supporters groups, and they had been bubbling up for a little while. Don't know where that stands. I think people have jumped to some conclusions about some of the statements that Don Garber made when he was asked about it. Sometimes you have to be pretty vague in statements if you're a commissioner or you're or league personnel because of the potential for lawsuits. So I don't jump to those conclusions based off that. If the reporting that has been out there about some of the people that have been part of supporters groups with New York, and to the point that it's scaring other fans off and it's intimidating to other fans, that's an issue that NYCFC needs to address 100%. And if it's creating a black eye for the league, it's something that the league needs to address 100%. I don't have all the information on it, so I can't speak completely intelligently about it. But what I've seen is a bad look, and it's something that needs to be handled in the right way. And look, I'm not one to tell you what that is because, again, you do have to be careful about these things to a degree. There have been issues of players being caught making homophobic statements on camera, on microphone, and those have been punished severely with multiple game suspensions. I don't know of fans being punished in those regards.
Yeah, and I don't either. And so, I mean, when John brought the question up, I was trying to rack my brain, and I couldn't think of an instance off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know of one, but we'll double check and see. All right, we've went an extra hour of stoppage time. I'm
stuff.
Tapping out. I'm tapping out. I'm done. My voice is going. I'm tapping out. I appreciate it, y'all. Thank you for asking so many questions, first off, and it was just a lot of stuff to try to cover. I hope we did it intelligently. It's a lot of new material for us as well. It's not easy. We've tried to make things as clear as we can because I know how complicated it is. And I just see so many people lumping so much stuff together and trying to do this in a 5-minute conversation, and you can't. You just cannot get into the ramifications of expansion and solidarity payments and training compensation in a soundbite. It's impossible. So I hope we've done right by you guys. If you have other questions, let us know. We'll answer them on Twitter as we go today. We'll also have a USL League 1 in 10 later today. We'll have an NWSL in 10 later today as both of those leagues get into their next weekend. USL Championship in 10 has already been posted. USL Championship play. Battery is being posted today, I'm assuming.
Now, actually. It went up at noon.
It just went up. And there you go. And Atlanta United 2 is off this weekend. They're back in action next Wednesday against the Tampa Bay Rowdies, who are also off this weekend. Atlanta United tomorrow, FC Dallas, 3:30 on the Five Stripes Countdown for Mike Conti and I. That will be available on a 92.9 The Game, on radio.com, on the Atlanta United app, on Sirius XM FC. Kickoff will be after 4 o'clock. We'll have the full-time report for an hour on all of those places except for probably Sirius XM FC. They usually check out and head to the next match. They don't carry the post game. Sometimes they do. You might get lucky. But you can catch us on the radio.com app or the Atlanta United app if you're not next to a radio. And the AT&T countdown to kickoff is an hour before kick, where we'll have your lineup that we'll see if I got any of it right. I have no idea. That'll be posted on Atlanta United's social media channels with myself and Mike Conti. And now I'm going to go drink a lot of tea and rest my voice because I've used it for an extra hour plus that I expected today. Yay! It was worth it, though. It was fun.
Yep.
Thanks, y'all, for being part of it. Thanks for asking all the questions. We'll be back Monday to wrap everything up on an Overreaction Monday. Mucha plata, y'all.
Happy National Garlic Day. And I don't know if it stacks up Peacocks against National High Five Day at all. Mucha plata, y'all.